welcome to City Hall and to our agenda meeting. We're going to have a presentation first. We scheduled at the request of the board asking for an update on things from our superintendent of the Little Rock School District and also from our police chief. And so we're going to start off our meeting with those presentations first, and then we'll move into our agenda. I can tell from looking out here at the audience that many of you are here are interested in certainly what our school superintendent has to tell us, as well as our police chief, and give us some updates. So without any further delay, let me call on Baker Curris, the superintendent of the Little Rock School District. Baker, welcome. We're glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. It's a treat to be with you, and I appreciate the chance to get together, and always enjoy talking to you and everybody, and frequently have an opportunity to do that. I'd like to show you a few slides if I could. If there's the first one, let's go to the second one. People don't realize how big LRSD is, and I know you sense that, but we have a budget of about $319 million. You can see where it comes from up there. We get $150 million from our tax base. A lot of people don't understand, too, that our school district is not coterminous with the city limits. You would all know that. Our school district runs from Patrick Country Road, which is just west of the ranch. It's on the western border of the new Bank of the Ozarks facility, runs down Cantrell Road to Catillus Road, and then heads south, and really doesn't cut into much of, say, subdivisions like Brody Creek. Then goes down, takes in J.A. Fair, runs out to the county that way. So we're not the Little Rock School District. We're one of many school districts in Little Rock. There are now a number of charter school districts that would rank within they would be bigger than, say, 180 of the school districts in Arkansas, and they're all resident in your community as well. Most people don't realize that. Let's look at the next one, please, Scott. Thank you, sir. We spend our money. Last year we spent about all we got, which we can't continue to do that. We're going to lose $37 million in operating money after the end of 16-17. Next school year, we'll no longer receive from the state approximately $37,300,000 in operating money. So when I arrived, and we can talk about how I got this job if y'all want to, it's interesting. But when I arrived, I was confronted with a budget deficit that was looming of about $37,300,000 out of a $317 million budget. That's a hill to climb. You know, it's more than 10% that we have to cut. And we're well on our way of doing that. And we're going to cut as far as we can away from the classroom every time. You can see our debt service, $14 million we spend in debt. It's not just that we have a lot of obligations in general on an operating basis. We have about $180 million worth of borrowed money. And I can tell you, when I stepped into this position, I felt like that was an anchor around my neck. We haven't gotten our money's worth for that borrowed money. We're trying to fix that. Let's please go to the next one, Scott. We have some schools that need attention. I'm not going to tell you exactly how I've tackled the problem, but I can assure you that in the school district now we have clear lines of authority. We have very clear lines of responsibility. We have defined goals and objectives. We have a systematic approach to education, which is different than we used to have. It was kind of confused, at least as far as I was concerned. And we're replicating the same thing in every school to drive student achievement. Because frankly, there's so much talk about the school district and so little emphasis on the classroom. Teaching and learning occurs one place, that's in a classroom, between a qualified teacher and a willing student. And every decision I've made since I started on May the 6th was related to the fact that we have to drive results in the classroom. Everything else is important, but that's the one thing we never lose sight of. And please go to the next slide. I could talk for hours about this stuff. We're giving a lot more real-time data. We're making data-driven decisions for every single student. I was in a school not long ago. I've got a badge. The only conditions I took for this job were that I had keys to every building, which I have in my hand, and a badge to get in every building. And I go in every building, unannounced by myself, usually through the back door. Not that I'm spying on people. I never park in the front. I leave that to our customers. But I typically like to go in and see what's for lunch. We'll talk about that in a minute, too. But the point about being in buildings is that I get to see what's going on. And the other day I was in a building where a student was struggling with a math problem. And I'm under FERPA. I can get any student information I want since I'm employed by the school district, obviously. I was able to look and see how that student had done on math assessments that she had taken the day before. So we've got a real strong database where we're making data-driven decisions about student instruction in real time. We've never done that before consistently across all of our platforms. I don't know whether it's going to pay dividends or not, but I know it's the smart and the right thing to do, and we can also adjust our programs now based on what seems to be working. And if you look at systems analysis, you realize that unless you have a system, you cannot make a data-driven decision and an adjustment to that system unless it's a consistent system across the board. Meaning to say, if you recreate the wheel every time something doesn't work, you really have no points of reference. So now at least we have common units of instruction developed by like-kind teachers. We have alignment of the curriculum to the standard. We have 3-week units of instruction with a pre-test and a post-test, and then we can see where the students are, where they need to be, and if that's not working, we can adapt. Now, we're not doing that perfectly everywhere, but we're now on, this is what we call quarter 3, and we just completed some of that, and the data look pretty good. Please go to the next one. That's just something I think is interesting. Look at all of those circles. Those are concentric circles drawn around elementary schools. And it just shows you where our schools are. It also shows you our school district. And it does show that we have a lot of schools east and a lot of schools central. That's Roberts out west. People ask me all the time, what do you want to close schools and all that stuff? No. But we do have empty seats on the east side of town. We fill those by busing kids from west to east primarily, and even so, we have about 900 empty seats primarily in 3 schools, Stevens, King, and Washington, and Carver as well. Great schools, and they're doing well, but these are our newer buildings, actually 4 of the newest buildings that we have, and they have empty seats. We're going to have to work through that, and we've got the Civic Advisory Committee meetings coming up. We're going to confront as a community, what do we want? And the question isn't, do you want to take education out of one community or another and all that sort of thing. That's really not the issue. The issue is, are we going to deliver education where students live in modern buildings, 21st century buildings that are set up much, much differently than schools built in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Much like a fire station, if you looked at it from the city perspective, if you have a fire station built in 1940, you can't get that big ladder truck that I see over on Chester or wherever that fire station is. I mean, it wouldn't fit in the little stations anymore. Schools are not a lot different. We deliver a different set of services now with different specialists, and we need modern buildings that can accommodate that. And that's our community has to embrace that idea. And I do think over time we can rebuild our schools. They'll be larger than some of the small ones we have. And I could talk for hours about that. Let's please go to the next slide. That's a group of kids that went to Euler with me. Most of those kids had never been on a college campus before. They're from Cloverdale. They're wonderful kids. That's what we're about. I was giving speeches and people kept wanting to ask me about numbers and all that stuff, and I finally quit doing what I'd just done to y'all. And I started putting up pictures, and I said, this is what's at stake here. These are wonderful students. We have a bunch of them. Let's look at a few more students. That's another one of our wonderful students who attends at Mablevale. That's a beautiful kindergarten classroom. We have the best teachers in the state, far better than our competitors have in Little Rock. We have certified teachers by and large. We're going to maybe have 15 or so TFA teachers who are going to be, I hope, very energizing and also use those kids or young people. As I get older, everybody seems to be a kid. But they'll be in high needs areas where we're having difficulty finding teachers, math, science, and some of the foreign languages. Please, next slide. That's some really cool kids. Those are over at Washington. Let's please the next one. These are kids that I told these kids it was lucky to rub a bald-headed man's head, and before I knew it, they all wanted to rub my head, so I had a picture made of that. But the only reason you say, why is he putting this stuff up here? It's because this is our community. These kids don't belong to us. They don't even belong to you. They belong to the city of Little Rock. And if we don't give them the very best that we have to give them, we're not doing our job. Next slide, please. That's a little girl that I just thought was cute. Next one, please. I danced a little bit that day. That was at Franklin, and I love to dance and sing, as y'all know. Please, next slide. These are some kids. I usually have lunch. If y'all ever want to go to me and find out what's going on at school, don't go in the principal's office and sit down and talk. Either wander around or go with me and have lunch with these kids. Kathy went one morning for breakfast. She's working on a food project, and they wanted to talk to me, and I said, I tell you what I'll do. I'll meet you at the cafeteria. Actually, that was at Hall, and we'll go have breakfast with a bunch of kids. You want to find out what kids want to eat? Where do you go? Not 810 West Markham. Go to a cafeteria and see what they're eating and talk to them. And of course, it takes a minute for them to warm up when they see me. Please, next one, and I'm going to rush through that. That was my plate. I ate everything on my plate. Next one, please. That's my, y'all think I'm not all in on this deal. I didn't go looking for this job, candidly. I accepted it because I want to try to help and make a difference, and that's my now 4-month-old grandbaby. She's reading an article that said something nice about me. Isn't it amazing that she could do that? And I think is that the last one? Well, that's one more kid. Let me tell you, I won't tell the whole story because I get choked up, and I am emotional about these kids. But this young man was over at one of our elementary schools, and I met him. He's a pre-kindergarten student, very attractive little guy, talkative, wanted to talk. And so we got to talk, and I said, what's your name? And he said, I'm Spider-Man. And he kind of broke down and started shooting those webs at me. It's just captivating. And he's not different from, every kid is just like that. These kids at this age are absolute sponges. They're dying to learn, and they're just phenomenal. And our community needs to embrace these children. All over the community, everybody needs to embrace them because LRSD will do our best, but we can't do it by ourselves. And that's really what I wanted to show you. That's enough of the slides, and please take that one down to that old man that looks more like my father than you can ever imagine. Got a few other things I could talk about. I know y'all want to talk about juvenile crime. I'm happy to do that. It's an issue. I don't think we run from that. We've got a wide variety of services we provide in our school district in conjunction with the city. We run marvelous summer programs in a number of our buildings, and I was in those programs last year. The kids are wonderful, and y'all's programs are wonderful. We want to partner up any chance we get. We have great relationship with Chief Buckner and his staff. We have great SROs who are on the spot doing great work. We're doing more joint training with them. I knew that was a weakness when I took the job, that we really weren't taking advantage of the resource that we had. And the chief has been so gracious to work with us and really embrace all this. So I'm really excited about that, and it works. I was out at a school the other day when things weren't going well, and the work that LRPD was doing along with our safety and security group was very, very well done, very professionally done by people who really have a caring attitude. So I think we've got always room to grow with respect to what we can do with the city, and we'd love to continue to partner. We've got a lot of challenges in our town, I'll tell you that for sure. We got, I don't want to really get off on it, but Little Rock is no longer the school district for the city of Little Rock. The county serves a great amount of the city. We have now charter enrollments that are substantial in our city, very large relative to most school districts in the state, and they're potentially much bigger. Those present a different set of challenges for an existing school district. I'll lay off of that. I'm an executive, not a policymaker. But you need to be on top of that. You need to think about how, because it'll have a lot to do with how our city grows and develops. We need a viable school district, and that's enough for me. Can I answer questions, or y'all want to?
Yes, Baker, I think there are a few directors that would like to either ask a question or comment. Director Richardson was first, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Baker, thank you for your presentation. You made reference to the loss of $37 million. And we also certainly know that charter schools are going to have an impact on the school district, not just financially, but educationally. What kind of adjustments are we looking at in terms of making the right kind of amendments to make sure that we minimize the impact that's going to have on us? Have you started looking at that or thinking through that or having conversations with other people to make those kind of assessments of what does that mean to us?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir. We have. Just so you'll know, but I got here in May, and by June 30th of that year, we had sort of turned the budget a little bit and actually surplus $2 million. This year, we've made a lot of adjustments in our budget already, administrative changes that we've made, cuts that we've made away from the classroom. We've changed and reduced the head count. We're going to continue to do that. We staffed differently in high schools, which reduced the number of teachers that we needed in order to teach full loads. That saved us some money. We reduced the amount of money we reimburse monthly for health insurance, which was painful to do, but we still reimburse $300 per month per employee, which is approximately $146 more than the state gives us for that particular line item in state funding. We're moving beyond just that. We've economized in other areas, and we're going to continue to do so. We're going to reduce the amount of support staff. We work so well with the teachers union, and I have to tell you that their leadership is stood firm and strong for students, and we worked out a contract with them that really serves everybody well, keeping in mind that our largest employee body are teachers. They're the jet fighter pilots. If we don't have happy teachers, cooperative working relationships with our teachers, we won't get anywhere. And we've got that now, which is really, really a plus. It's a plus for me. Frankly, I mean, I didn't have to come in here and introduce myself to anybody here. I don't see Miss Wright as much as I see some of y'all, but she and I are acquainted, and I've been acquainted with most of y'all for 35 years. Same's true with the teachers. So we've made hard cuts like that in health insurance. Now, next year, we're working on reducing the amount of money we spend on transportation, among many other things. We spend $17 million on busing for no good reason. We don't get any diversity. We just move kids all over the place. So we've made some major changes that are going to reduce the number of kids that have to have alternative assignments because there's no room in their school, save for a first grade child. We bus them across town, which is counterproductive. And with all the changes that we've made with administrative cuts and elimination of positions, this year I think we'll surplus at least $12 million. So that puts us in the range of having to find another $20 million, give or take, maybe 22. And we're well on our way. I think we can save a lot of that money. We're going to go to a 190-day contract rather than 192 days, where teachers work 190 days like they do in most other districts. Won't eliminate any instructional days. We'll still have 178 instructional days for students. That'll save us over $1 million. We're going to go to a administrative contract where people who are on 12-month contracts will give up 5 contract days. In essence, take 5 days off and a commensurate reduction in pay. My pay will go from $150,000 to $147,000. And I would have done this job for nothing. Johnny Key asked me to do it, and I said I would, and I would do it for nothing. He said, you got to be paid. And I agreed to be paid $150,000. I didn't even know what it's going to be. I just said I'll take it for $50,000 less than the prior superintendent. And so it's shared sacrifice is what I'm saying. It's not really about what I'm losing. It's everybody's going to lose. We're going to try to protect people on the low end of the pay scale who can't afford even a small cut. But everybody's going to have to share in that. It's just where we are. And I could go on and on and on about other things that we're doing, and it's a tedious process. Y'all have been through it. I mean, you just got to go inch by inch by inch, and that's what we're doing.
So if I heard you correctly, the cuts are going to be on the administrative side. We're not looking at cutting any kind of programs or enhanced programs for the young people, because we all have to suffer. I agree with you, but we want to minimize the impact it's going to have on the young people. Are we entertaining any cuttings of programs?
Not yet. Not yet. We cannot do that. We cannot diminish the educational relationship between teachers and students, or the value that comes from putting your money there. That's where the money has to go. I mean, we're going to consolidate some administrative functions. We'll move some people from older buildings that are, the thing people don't understand, it's not just that we have 48 schools, and where most districts our size have half that many. Springdale has half as many elementary schools as we do, and almost the same number of elementary students. So we've got to work on that. But what we're doing is, like, we'll move safety and security and athletics into a new building. We've got a lot of moves like that we're making that'll save us money and consolidate. But it's not going to be easy, and we're cutting up against the bone. But so far we haven't cut a single teacher, and I don't think we ever will. And I don't think we'll ever have to cut anything the last thing I ever want to do is cut anything that benefits students. It's going to be as far away from them as possible. but we got to be more efficient. We spend about $13,000 per student here, and that's way, way higher than, say, a Springdale, which is about $9,700 per student. And they have the same number of kids that we do that are kids of need.
Well, the not yet part, Baker, is a perfect segue to my next question. Now that you have a crystal ball, have you had any kind of projection on what we're going to lose financially in terms of the charter school movement and people leaving us to go to charter schools? Have you had any kind of assessment or done any projection on what that's going to mean financially to the district?
I have indeed, and let me tell you what the reality is, and I'm glad you asked that question, but I'm going to answer it specifically. It's not just the fact that a student leaves. That revenue goes with that student. It's about $6,500. If we lose a student, we lose $6,500. But it's a competitive environment. I love competition. Competed all my life. I love choice. I love to go to a restaurant and, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have that. So I get all of that. But what's really happening in Little Rock right now is that we have a special ed percentage in our school district, for example, that's about 11.5%. If you look at our primary competitors, their special ed numbers are much smaller. Not so much, maybe half that much in percentage terms. But what's really important about that number is that the range of disability described by this broad category special ed is really very broad. And so Little Rock, and we love every child, and I go into you just wouldn't believe the good work we do with children of all backgrounds and of all levels of capability, and we love every one of them. But those kids come to us. So if you look at a school that doesn't have the same number of kids who speak English as a second language, doesn't have the same number of kids who are children of poverty, doesn't have the same number of kids who have special needs, you'll find that we can't operate that way. The funding formula is not built around one district getting one certain group of kids and another getting a different set. It's not going to work. And our poverty percentages are about 75% overall district-wide. Most of our competitors are in the 30s, mid-30s. Again, and there's a broad range within free and reduced lunch that really doesn't tell the whole story. You really have to go to a school and open car doors at the carpool line to get a real sense of who's coming in the building and what their level of financial capability is. And as I say, we embrace the challenge, but the fact of the matter is if everybody doesn't embrace the same challenge, and if we find ourselves as a district of last resort, we're in real trouble. And we actually do better. When you solve for the poverty quotient, which everybody, most experts agree that poverty is not the indicator. It's just a proxy for the things that indicate academic achievement. If somebody doesn't have a stable family life, they tend to have less money. If they're less not as well educated, they tend to have less money. So this poverty thing it doesn't mean that children who are in a poverty situation don't do well. We have many kids who do extremely well, but it's a proxy for a lot of the things that really challenge us: mobility, lack of consistent employment, poor housing. These are things that we have to confront as a community. We got to spread people out. I mean, I know I'm preaching to the choir. We can't have haves and have-nots in our community and expect the school district to deal with that whatever happens. It's just not going to work. But we have to confront the whole issue of how do we holistically educate every child in this community.
I can see I could be problematic when you have a concentration of our population that have those poor negative outcomes. And when you made reference to the county as being part of our district too, I'm assuming that you mean that we're losing some of our people who have the mobility to go to the county, losing from Little Rock School District to the county?
We do lose some, but what I was really meaning to say, and I didn't say it well, was that the Pulaski County Special School District serves a great deal of the city of Little Rock. Y'all may remember in was it 2001 when I came down here and spoke with respect to a large annexation of 712 acres. You probably don't remember that. I do, because I said at the time that if we're going to have shared city services, police, fire, water, all that sort of thing, maybe we need to plan for education. And I'm still saying that now. I just wish we could get a comprehensive plan countywide for all the public schools. That includes charters, the county, LRSD. The state board has already said they think the better alignment is one district south of the river. I haven't thrown in on that, but if that's the case, I'm ready to get started because we have no time to waste. Great questions.
You did make reference to those partnerships, and this is my last question, Baker, and I thank you for your presentation. I know back in 2007, some of us went to a National League of Cities conference, and we came back with information from then Mayor of Denver, John Hickenlooper. I think he's the governor of Colorado now, about school community partnerships where they utilize those buildings to have out-of-school programming to help improve education outcomes. And I think that was the genesis for us having our first, in a while, joint school city board meeting that we had at the district. And I think subsequent meetings devolved into report out sessions. I think you were on the board at that time. What are your thoughts around how do we improve those school community partnerships for out-of-school programming for young people in the summer when we have these wonderful big buildings that are basically empty?
Well, let me just give you my vision, okay? And I don't have the money to do this, and I don't know if we have the will in the community to confront this sort of thing. But let's just say
The will is growing.
well, I know it is, and I'm gratified by the support I've gotten in the community from so many different people, many of whom are in this room. So my vision would be that if we have a building, let's say a building built in the late 40s, that's serviceable and clean with a big kitchen, a nice library, even a health clinic. But it's difficult to deliver educational services in that setting because it's small, meaning you have to share specialists, speech, reading specialists, occupational therapists, all the people that we need now to serve a student in a small building that have to be shared are very inefficient employees. But let's just say we could build a brand-new building, just as nice as the nicest building. And if you look at our buildings and you determine in your own mind how nice they are, all you have to do is look at when they're built. Every time we build a building, it's the nicest building we've built. And so if you just simply look at the dates when we build buildings, that's how you'll find which ones are in the best shape educationally, because they were built state-of-the-art. So let's just say, fast forward, let's build a state-of-the-art building in, say, the area South Central somewhere. Big, marvelous, state-of-the-art building. But then we have a perfectly serviceable small building with space for a health clinic, space for a wellness clinic, space for nutritional counseling, and maybe a food bank, space for afternoon daycare, space for homework help, space for family counseling. If I had $10 million right now, you know where I'd spend it? Social workers. I wouldn't spend it on more teachers. I would spend it on social workers, helping families who desperately love their kids. The idea that people don't love their kids and their kids somehow fail in school because they don't love them is complete garbage. And I think everybody knows that now. But that's not the anyway. But people need help. They need help, and with respect to 1,000 different things. But if we could have social workers in places like that, where kids could have a safe place to study and a fun place to go, and a summer program, a branch of the library, that's what the future holds. If we have the nerve and the willpower to confront the things that we hate to think about. And that's what I'm trying to do. I'm really desperately trying to do that. And then turn those buildings into really viable community centers where people have fun and learn, and they're nurtured in every way, physically, mentally, socially, academically.
I agree wholeheartedly, because a lot of those buildings are located in the areas where we have our greatest demographic challenges, we have our greatest social challenges, and I'm supportive of that approach. And I think we had a Beacons concept we did many, many moons ago that kind of mirrored what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I'm hoping we develop, marshal the wheel, and identify the resource to be supportive of that whole approach. Thank you for your presentation.
Well, thank you.
I know that each one of us could probably spend an hour talking with Baker, and we've got another presentation. We also have a board meeting, so I'm going to ask everybody to try and focus your comments, and not that they weren't, but I'm trying to keep everybody on track. If
Well,
we could.
I'll chop my answers off too.
Director Hendricks, you're next, please.
Thank you, Mayor, and I will be brief. Of course, Baker, you're here because of a discussion that I brought before the board that had to do with black-on-black crime, New Year's Day, and I wanted to share with you that I did make an FOI request of one of your personnel for the number of my males that have been suspended from the school district in the last school session. And the other thing that I'll be brief about is the new schools. I know you didn't come here to talk about that, but I just wanted to share to the audience, I'm a native of this city. We have closed West Side, Mitchell, Ish, Wrightsville. All of these schools are in the inner city, and I really have problems with new schools being built out west. That's my comment.
I'll just be very brief to address that. I don't care where schools are built. I just want them built new where the kids are. And so we wouldn't have a disagreement about that. But, and I know it's painful to close schools. It's tough. But the funding model where we get our money is based on a 500 student school. And, but I don't want to take education
Baker,
out of neighborhoods.
could you address the process the school district does on suspensions and removal from the mainstream classrooms, and just briefly touch on that?
Well, we employ progressive discipline with students and employees in a similar way. We have a series of defined infractions, if you will, that range with the punishment would range from an in-school suspension. Once you get to this point, first is a warning, obviously, to a student, an in-school suspension, an out-of-school suspension for a short period of time, up to a 10-day suspension out of school. Then we have an alternative school where kids go, and we're working on our alternative school. Then there are Class 4 offenses, so to speak, where kids can be expelled. There are some automatic expulsion. I think if a child brings a firearm to school property, they're automatically expelled. But since I was on the board, I went on that board in '98, and I'll be brief. I'll just say this: it's so painful to think of expelling a student, especially a student who's failing. And most of them, that's the first question I ask. And I've looked at a lot of these files of kids who have really failed to the point where they've been injured or injured someone else. And almost the common denominator you find is that they don't read well. They're smart, too. A lot of these kids are GT kids identified in elementary schools. But that's how it goes. We've got an alternative school. We're working in fact, I was talking to Mr. Webb here tonight. We're going to try to come up with a better way of dealing with alternative education, more career-oriented. We're working on that. But that's kind of how it goes. We don't put kids out on the street very often. I don't think that's the way to do it because I think that multiplies the problem ultimately.
Thank you. Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Baker. As you stated, you and I are acquainted. However, you don't see me as much as you see others because I focus my attention on the kids when they're not in school. Just as you said, they need a safe place to be and go in their after-school hours, and their parents need to interact with them in that safe place. So I focus on trying to get that accomplished in the area where I represent. Mm-hmm. And I have served on a number of PTAs, even though I don't have kids.
Well, thank you.
But my question to you is regarding truancy. How are you dealing with the issue, and what can we do to help? And is it a big issue?
Well, it is a big issue. It's a really big issue. I mean,
I hear that from my constituents that are retired and are at home during the day.
Well, they have my number too.
Yeah, they see all these kids running around.
Well, and it's a huge issue. I mean, on any given day, we might have 8 to 9% of our students who are not in certain schools who are not in school.
That's a lot.
It's a ton. The only thing worse than that is that we have administrators and teachers who are in that same percentage. And I've confronted that head on. It's just not acceptable to me. I mean, we've got to come to work. But we got to want to come to work, and the kids have to want to come to school. And we have a truancy program and a truancy officer and all that sort of thing. We intervene one-on-one when we can find caring adults and try to conference with them and get their kids in school. And we're frustrated. I don't know how we can help. If you view it as an enforcement problem, I think that's solving the problem at the wrong end. Frankly, the things that I'm doing right now to try to limit truancy are trying to improve reading skills of kids that make it out of the third grade. The thing that we find is that kids who are successful in school they love school, but kids who don't find themselves getting in trouble. But we expel very few kids, and if you see truants, we have a hotline. But I'll need to put you in touch with the people who deal with that every day. I'm not giving you a very good answer, and I know that, so I'll need to fill you in with all the rest of that later.
I would appreciate it. I know the mayor has mentioned on occasion how difficult it is to deal with this issue because of the way the courts are set up and how long it takes to get a truant into court to try to address the situation with the parents. So I don't know all the ins and outs of it. I just know what my constituents tell me is that during the day they see a lot of kids walking the street, and it's a major problem. But I want to know what we can do to help that situation, and I'm sure you'll let us know.
I will.
Okay.
But let me just amplify one point very quickly, is that truancy is not, it's a symptom of a different problem. It is the end result of failure of families, failure of an educational system. It's what we see on the backside. So we're working as hard as we can intentionally to make school a more inviting place for everyone, and a place where learning takes place and kids want to learn and succeed. Most kids want to succeed. If you really talk to them, they're not happy that they're unable to succeed in school. But you're right, I'll get you the info and we'll see what we can do once it gets to that point.
And I heard you say something about social workers, that if you had your way, you would hire social workers. Do you know what that would what kind of money that would entail, or have you?
It'd be less than $1 billion. I hear people throw that number around and investing.
Like it's nothing.
Well, yeah, golly. Again, schools people think of schools as leading indicators. Mm-hmm. I don't think of schools as leading indicators. Schools are a representation of the health of communities. And that's not to say every community that has a school that's not doing well is unhealthy. I don't mean to be pejorative in that sense. It's just simply put, if you have schools that aren't doing well, the problem is not confined to the four walls of that school, and it seldom is. We're doing all we can within those four walls, but we want to embrace, and that's what's so good about this. I want the discussion to include things like social workers. How do we make families successful? How do we keep people from moving all the time? You would not believe, and I'm eating into the chief's time. I need to sit down, and I'll come back another time.
You got a couple more people want to ask you questions.
Okay, well, I'll go quickly then. I'm going to quit right there. Y'all know what I mean.
Director Adcock.
Oh, pass, since Baker wants to leave now.
Okay. Vice Mayor Hines.
Thanks, Baker. I just wanted to say thank you for your leadership. I know coming in the circumstances is not easy, but I do know your dedication and love for the city of Little Rock and our schools. I also want to say I appreciate your leadership on, even though I'll disagree with Director Hendricks, the need for West Little Rock Middle Schools. What would be the financial impact? Because I know the mayor and I went down and talked with the State Board of Education about having a contiguous, my ward's kind of that fractured representation. Sure. About 80% of it's in the Pulaski County School District, the other 20%'s in the Little Rock School District. And the funny thing is, where you're building your new middle school, which I applaud the reuse of that. I've looked at some of the new schools we build, and I think sometimes people build monuments to themselves when you can have a good education out of a reuse of a good building like that. But it sits right on the edge, and we're going to have kids out in West Little Rock that can't go there because Pulaski County's not allowing choice to be able to do that. But what would the financial impact if we could get the federal courts out of Pulaski, get us unitary, and then have you looked or know what the financial impact would having a contiguous school district south of the river for you guys? Would that help some of the financial problems you're sailing into?
It would. And what it would do, and it's not just Pulaski County. Keep in mind we have really 4 major school districts that serve Little Rock, 2 of which have facilities in Little Rock besides ours. But if you had comprehensive planning, just imagine we're building a new middle school. Joe T's right just down the road. We could collaborate and build a high school if that were necessary. And incidentally, just so everyone will know, that new middle school will not be majority white. It'll be majority minority. It's going to be a marvelous school, and it's going to help desegregate education for a large number of kids. But be that as it may, what you're talking about is coordinated planning. Just imagine if we could actually coordinate. We didn't have these artificial lines and artificial barriers, and we could say what's best for everyone. Because right now what's happening is you look around, there's only so much money to go around, and we're stranding investment every day. Every day we build a new school, whether it's a new charter or a new school that's not going to be fully utilized. That's money that goes somewhere where it's not being utilized fully in the classroom to impact teaching and learning. And that's the question that needs to be asked every time whether we're in the county or well, I'd love to have a comprehensive plan for education for Pulaski County.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Baker, and I know that the State Board of Education did have a subcommittee to talk about bringing those boundaries together, and certainly I think that's aspirational, and if there's a way that we can be of further assistance in that, I hope you'll let us know.
Thank you.
As you communicate with Mr. Key and the other members of the State School Board.
Yeah,
State-
thank you all.
Thank you very much. Okay, we can now move to Chief Butner. Welcome, Chief. Good to
Thank you,
see you.
sir. Mayor, Vice Mayor, Directors, Mr. Moore, Mr. Carpenter, good evening to you. In the interest of time, I will give a very brief synopsis of our juvenile footprint as it relates to the initiatives that we do with youth in our community. We have 5 primary areas that we're able to serve youth in our community. They are the School Resource Officer Program, our Youth Power Council, Our Kids, also known as the OK Program, the GEMS Program, which is a new program, Girls Empowered by Mentoring Sisterhood. It's basically the OK Program for females. We had a program with the OK, tried and tested. It's kind of our flagship as an agency in the community on how we can interact with young people and have positive outcomes. So we duplicated that with females. Then the next one is a police youth live-in camp. It's an annual camp that we have every summer. That we stay with the kids for a week and give them an opportunity to do some things. There are some common threads with our programs, and they kind of rest on mentoring, positive interaction between police and the youth to try to change some of these historical relationships that we have in our troubled communities, particularly Black and brown communities. And that's the purpose of us trying to reach some of these young folks at a young age before they get to adulthood to establish a relationship. So rather than me go through each program like I intended to do, I want to give you all more of a chance to ask me some questions, because many of these programs I'm sure that you are aware of. Before I do that, I want to give you a brief synopsis of our crime for 2015. In the city of Little Rock, in talking to Director Richardson before we came in, we can have a couple of incidents that can occur in our city that will shock the conscience of all of us. There are things that we're just not used to seeing on a daily basis when we had like the 24 hours with 3 homicides in one day, one of which was a young lady who was holding a 2-year-old child at the time of her death. Those kind of things, they make us all create some kind of moment of that the sky is falling and things are egregious. And I can assure you, if you're the family that has had to endure that, that is exactly how that feels. But I can tell you that overall, there's some good things going on in our community as it relates to crime when you look at that totality of circumstances and how we've done in comparison to our history. When you look at the 10-year comparison here, for the city for 2015, last year we had 30 homicides. There were 176 rapes, 756 robberies, 24 aggravated assaults, for a total of 2386 for the violent crime. Those are the areas of the Part 1 crimes that make up the areas that we report to the FBI, that gives us that annual report card that you see Little Rock listed amongst our comparable cities, that gives us that information. The issue with that is 2 of the kind of the driving forces with our aggravated assaults and also the rapes. Both of those crimes occur with a pre-existing relationship. In many instances, the vast majority of our rapes occur between rarely do we have at our city to where there's an unknown, there's an X factor to where we're looking for someone, to where some young lady has alleged that a gentleman has raped her. High percentage of our cases are 2 individuals know each other, there's some kind of meeting, sex occurs, the young lady says that it was forced, the gentleman says that it was consensual, and we have kind of a divided he said, she said. Those cases are extremely difficult to prevent, they're extremely difficult to prosecute. And Mary, in your history in prosecuting these kind of cases, it's very, very difficult to get prosecution to go forward on these types of cases. So that's one of the difficulties in preventing something like that. Same thing with domestic violence. When you look at the four corners of a home, it's very difficult for police to know when and where someone's going to have a disagreement behind the confines of the walls of their house. So that makes it difficult to do that. One of the things that we're trying to do to address that is we're trying to do more of our data from an intelligence-led policing standpoint to go to some of these locations to help, because one of the big problems is having victims cooperate in these examples. So we're trying to reach out to them to provide more services to them through our victim services unit and also through the VRN that we're currently in with the Department of Justice right now to come up with initiatives that are working in other cities to try to create a Little Rock model that will work for us. So that's kind of our violent crime footprint. Then you look at burglary, larceny, auto theft, arson. You can see again along the bottom line there, we were down in every property crime category for the UCR crimes that we report. 82% of the crime that we have in our city is property crime. While our reputation becomes somewhat known because of these violent incidents that we have, the vast majority of the crime that occurs in the city of Little Rock is property crime. The frustrating part of that is many of these crimes are preventable. When you leave your door open, you leave your garage up, when you leave an iPad sitting on the front seat of your car, all of those things create an opportunity for thieves to make you the victim of a crime. We try as best we possibly can to educate the public on these types of things, to try to help us help them to prevent some of these things. But I think that you can clearly see from a property crime standpoint that we're heading in a good direction in how we're able to effectively manage that. Last year, the 2015 numbers that you see with the asterisk there, number of incidents versus number of offenses, those numbers have not been scrubbed yet. And what I mean by scrub, the numbers that we put into the FBI system, there's a difference between an incident and the number of offenses that occurred in that incident. So the numbers that you see for 2015 are not reflective of all of the offenses that would occur in that number. So you will see a slight variation in that number. We believe that once the numbers are done, that we should probably see somewhere in the neighborhood of an 8% decrease in crime for 2015. And that's coming on the heels of a 5% or so decrease that we had for 2014. So I think that we're doing some good things. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for improvement. We're making great strides in diversifying our police department. These are the kind of things that will not show up in a statistical data sheet. I can tell you that upon my arrival, we had approximately 12 Hispanic police officers on the department. In less than 2 years, we've almost doubled the number of Hispanics, starting with this class that we will have on February the 22nd, which will have 6 Hispanics in that class, 5 of which speak Spanish. So we're making great strides there. The number of community organizations that we've started, the outreach that we're doing, the social media footprint that we have, there's a lot of good things going on with the police department. There are still things that occur in our community that we all wish would go away. Who wants to read about a police officer being shot while working off duty in a Red Lobster? That's shock to our consciousness. Why would we even need a police officer in a Red Lobster? But that's the reality of some of the areas of our city that's needed. So I will leave that for you. If you can also look at the graph there on page 12, and you can see kind of what we've been doing over the past 2 years, where we're consistently going down in number of total offenses that we have for the city. And at this time, if you have any questions, I will be glad to answer those.
Director Hendricks, did you have your light on? Okay, you're first, please.
Thank you. And I would also like for Baker to supply me with the request of his report. Tell him what I said. Thank you for, I just had to make a statement. Thank you, Chief, for the report that you have handed us. I wanted to talk about the new classes that you said is coming on board. And if we all listen to the national news, these recruits or these new people that are coming on, well, they represent the community. And when I say that, I think you and I know that minorities are majority in the city of Little Rock. So that's a question that I want to ask you.
Of the 33 folks that we have in this class, if you count Black and Hispanic, I believe that class is more than 50% minority for our next class coming up.
That sounds good. It's better than it has been. My last question is on the curfews. You may not be talking about it today, but please do something about the curfew. law that we have. I don't know, I'm sure you've seen it. And we talked about perhaps reviewing that because we have too many teenagers that are walking the streets after hours. When I think of the little girl that was shot and killed that was 14 years old, that may have been before you got here. But please help us with curfew. That's my concern.
Thank you.
Director Campiris, you recognize, please.
This is more of a comment both for the chief and Baker. Baker? Yes, you know, we spend $5.5 million a year on PIT money. And we solicit proposals from agencies that want to help with help with taking care of the problems we're all concerned about. And it struck me looking at the first part of your presentation and what Baker said about social workers, that we ought to encourage you and in fact insist that you go back to your respective organizations and put in proposals for that $5.5 million on how you think we can take care of the problems. I mean, Irma has said consistently for years, it's the family that's the problem. Baker said, you know, if I had social workers in the school, I could help. And, you know, it maybe we ought not to be taking all of our suggestions on how to take care of this problem from people who have agencies that deal with this and start saying to the people that are on the ground, what would you do to do this? So, you know, we can certainly, because you work for Bruce, ask Bruce to ask you to do this, and I'm certainly sure we can ask Baker.
I'll let him know that you gave me those instructions.
And I'm sure that we can ask Baker to do the same thing, to start bringing back some proposals that say, I see the problem, I'm on the street, I'm on the front line. How do we start addressing this problem, and give us some suggestions on how we should spend that $5.6 million or $5.5 million more successfully? Because the frustration, at least, I think the cumulative frustration of this board is we have done a great job, we have a great reputation of having that money and dedicating it for this purpose, but we've got a extremely poor record, I think, on delivering or the results we've gotten for that 5.5. So listening to the two of y'all, I would suggest that y'all get together with Bruce and your respective organizations and see if you can start putting some programs in that we can look at.
That's an intelligent point. Because I was trying to be brief about my presentation, one of the things that I was going to advise you of, the reason I listed the school resource officer program first, because that was where the biggest opportunity for improvement was. Upon my arrival, I discovered that we were arresting about 1,200 juveniles a year. 48% of the juveniles arrested in our city were being arrested on school property in the schools. Our arrest numbers for juveniles during the summer months would actually decline, which was alarming. 86% of those kids were African-American kids. In working and looking across the country, there was an initiative that was going on in Philadelphia where they had some success with that, because through kind of unintended consequences, we were basically creating a pipeline to prison from school, because we had went from positive contact with kids, which was what the initiative was founded upon, to where we had become kind of an occupying security force in the school. So in working with Mr. Curtis and his folks, and then getting my team to kind of philosophically approach this differently, we wanted to see how we could get school administrators, specifically security officers, to be the front line for a first responder to incidents in the school, so that we're not arresting a young man but simply because he says, I'm not going to sit down, or he's being disorderly. That's not a police issue. That's a school issue. I can tell you that in doing so, in this current school year that we have, our arrests for misdemeanors are down in the high 40%. Our arrests for felonies are down nearly 50%. So we've decreased that drastically. And in doing so, instead of arresting a young man and using, I guess, some of the things that we practice what we were preaching, we talk to the kids all the time about de-escalating. So we wanted to use some of those same skills for our police officers. Rather than arriving on that scene and the first thing that we do is to remove that child from the class or from the school, now we begin to use some of the services with Dana Dissett and the community programs, to where we kind of take that kid out the side door to see if we can get some kind of thing with counseling, whether that be with the parent, whether that be with the child, addressing self-esteem issues, all of those social things that you're talking about through the YIP out the side door is helping us reduce those arrest numbers in the school. This is our first year for doing that. I can tell you that we're still having incidents in the school, so while our arrests are down, we're still managing a lot of things, but I can tell you that pipeline to prison, we have reduced that drastically, and I expect that to improve more in the future.
And you know, that's one thing, Baker, you know, I know one of the things I've always thought about, whether they're social workers or counselors, you know, the ability to assess a child and what they're coming into the school system with in terms of deficits is so critically important. And I know Dana and our community programs are in the process and continuing to develop this dashboard of services that are already out here. And so really one of the things, I mean, in my observation is there's a lot of people, well-intended, all doing their own things in silos, and they're not communicating. We're not being as effective as we can using the existing services that are out here in the community. So I'm sure we need more counselors, I'm sure we need social workers, but we also need to really take advantage of those services that are out there. And so one of the things I think the city can provide is really the umbrella of all of the services that are available, and then make sure that we've got it communicated to the people who know that there's an issue there that needs to be addressed, and make sure we get the proper referrals, which is I think what the chief is talking about in terms of reducing those arrests in our schools.
Yes, sir.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Chief, thank you. This brings up one issue. Baker, you know, the Children, Youth, and Families Commission, we have a slot for a Little Rock School Board member, but since the state takeover, we have been absent that. And Tom, since Baker essentially serves as the school board, could he not appoint somebody to serve on CYF, or will we have to change our ordinance regarding that? At the very least, Baker, love to have somebody from your staff come to our monthly meetings because we're discussing all this. So, Tom?
Well, the ordinance says specifically to be a member of the school board. If you don't have a school board, I don't know quite how you would fill that.
Well, let's just amend the ordinance. It's a
Yeah.
quick little amendment, and we can take care of it.
Yeah, because I think that's one of the big things with our youth master plan. I'd love to have, we need that input from somebody. So even if it comes from the advisory council, I think it would be good. So Tom, will you work on that? Chief, thanks for your input. We talk about prevention, and I think you know the biggest thing we're dealing with is the perception out there. And I can go out and I can tell people our crime numbers are down, but we have incidences and they're happening all over the city. So from a tactical standpoint, what are we doing as far as addressing these hot spots where we have stuff? You know, we've had some occurrences out west. I know we've had them in southwest. So how are you tactically addressing these when we have a flare up in these areas?
It's kind of a three-pronged approach. We operate from an intelligence-led policing model. The first thing that we want is we want accurate, timely data that gives me an opportunity to direct our patrol commanders, our investigative commanders, as to what location and then what individuals, once we get in that location, that we want to deliver our energy to. So if we're having problems with car break-ins, let's say in the area west of 430 on Cantrell there, then we want to be able to see very early when a pattern is there for break-ins, and then to make sure that the individuals who are responsible for patrolling that area or working that area are receiving that information so that we know to go, this is the suspect we're looking for, this is the car that individual is driving, and this is the description of the individual that we want to do that, deliver those, initiatives to that individual. That's only part of it. The other part of that is we want to work with the community. In an optimal performance for a police chief, if I can get 200,000 citizens to engage in public safety with their eyes and ears to say, if you see something, say something, then that's what we want to do. Our Facebook page now, it's probably quadrupled in the past year and a half, and those are some of the things that we're pushing out to the community to let people know. Please do not leave your car running in the morning because we know it's cold, because we have a rash of stolen vehicles, and getting that information out. Again, intelligence-led policing to give that information to the public so that they can help us help them. So it's basically intelligence-led policing, hotspot enforcement, and then a focused deterrent on the individuals we believe who are responsible for the crime in those areas.
Thank you.
Director Richardson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, thank you for your presentation. Very rarely do I disagree with my good friend and colleague, Dr. Dean, but I think that, I think, Bruce, the police department has gotten some PIT funding in the past for certain programs. Am I not correct? And Chief, your budget is about 130-something million.
My dream or your dream?
No, your budget.
Okay.
I mean, no. Your budget is about 44 million, about 45 million. Is that correct?
That's 68.
68 million. So, it goes back to your point earlier that, we have a couple of high profile incidents, and then it makes a lot of us question in terms of how we're funding, how we're doing programming right now. And as you mentioned, we've had a steady decline in juvenile crime. I mean, and sometimes we haven't had the same equivalent decline with adult crimes. We have the same police department out there in the community patrolling the same communities. And I just think that it becomes unfortunate for me sometimes, many of you guys in this room here tonight who are doing yeoman's job out there in the community, going above and beyond, and for us to have questions about the effectiveness of what we're doing. And a lot of times it's based on a couple of high-profile crimes, as you mentioned before. And I think we have different funding streams for different approaches, different initiatives. And I think we've also, Bruce, in the past, funded some school-based initiatives. Am I correct? So I think we've been all encompassing of that approach, Dean. And I just I shudder to think. Don't hit your button, Dean.
We'll save the arguments for later.
You're right, but I thank you for your approach. I thank you for your acknowledgement of the OK program, the GEMS program, and the acknowledgement that over half of our juvenile arrests are made by school resource officers in schools. They're not made in the community, not happening out there, and that's a problem. And I think you're doing a wonderful job to address that. So I want to thank you for your presentation. I want to thank the people in this room tonight for doing the wonderful work that you're doing. And may I cut the arguments off at that? We're 10 after 6 o'clock.
Just a quick disclosure on that 68 million, because some of my fellow department heads, we hear that enormous number. 90% plus of that is for salaries and benefits. So about 10% of that I have for operating expenses. So people think when you see that $70 million, we think, well, the chief's just got money coming out of his ears. That's not the case.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah, I think you told us that during the budget process.
Yes, sir.
Director Adcock.
Thank you, Chief, very much.
Thank you.
The number one program I think in this whole city, as far as youth, is Willie Davis's program, Sergeant Davis.
Agreed.
I think that he does a fantastic job. I'm interested in the GEM program, which is new this year for young ladies. How do you recruit for that program?
The young ladies basically we have 3 schools right now, Cloverdale, Henderson, and I believe McClellan. Anyone is welcome to participate, but that's kind of where we're housed at right now. I believe we have roughly 140 or so young ladies who are in the program, which is a lot considering that we're in our first year. We also have approximately 27 mentors who are helping us to address these young ladies. Alpha Kappa Alpha, historically black sorority, has been one of the organizations that has stepped forward to help us with the young ladies under the same principle as Sergeant Davis's OK program. One of the things that when it clicked for me that Willie Davis was doing some things that were monumental, he showed me an email that he had from one of the teachers from one of the young men in his program. And the teacher was emailing Sergeant Davis to let him know that the child's grades were going down and his behavior had changed. Now, in a perfect world, that email should be going to the parents. But we have a program to where and he's got about 220 or so kids in his program, and he's receiving that email to where he pulls that young man out of class, and they kind of have a come to Jesus talk about what we're going to do when we go back, which includes going back and apologizing to that teacher, and she put that in the email. So that told me kind of the gravity of what Willie was doing in our schools, but Willie can't do it all. LRPD can't do it all. Mr. Karras can't do it all, which is why you see me constantly speak in the community that the parents have to step up and pick up some of this burden because the city just can't do it all.
I agree with you. I heard that loud and clear last night, too, when you spoke.
Thank you.
If you had extra money, where would you put youth? Where would you put it?
If I had extra money,
We've heard Mr. Kerr say he would put it in social workers.
if I had extra money for youth, I would certainly, and I agree with it, and not just because he's here, I would certainly do it more towards prevention, intervention, social work type of things, because again, that side door exit that I talked about in lieu of arrest, when you suspend a black or brown child, specifically boys, you might as well put on the paperwork, here is your prison number. And that's if you're lucky, you'll go to prison. Many of them end up dead out here on the streets of Little Rock. So anything that we can do to get them to instead of going through that door of criminal justice to where we can try to reach them, but before they get in that system that puts a stain on you that will never wash off, that's where I would put the money.
Okay, thank you very much.
Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief, I'm glad you came tonight to give us an update
Thank you.
on what's going on with the city and the crime. You seem to really have a grasp of the problems that we have, and I love it when you spit the numbers out about we've got this many crimes in this situation. It's been a while since I've been to one of your quarterly meetings with the Southwest Little Rock, but I seem to remember that typically Southwest Little Rock runs less crime in a lot of categories than other parts of the city. Would you agree to that?
That's true.
Okay. Well, when Vice Mayor Hines talked about we have crime all over the city, and then he says we have problems in Southwest Little Rock, I could not let that pass. So, we get enough from the media, anything that happens south of 630 at Southwest Little Rock, and we do not consider that to be Southwest Little Rock. And I understand that the situations, if the crimes are dispatched by police in the Southwest, from the Southwest precinct, then they're labeled Southwest. But I take offense for someone saying that we have problems in Southwest Little Rock. We have problems all over the city, as you just alluded to. So I want you to take that back.
We'll have the slap-downs between board members here later, okay? Director Campuris.
Well, I'm not as articulate as Ken is, but I am frustrated about the way we spend our PIT money. And I think if you have two people that have their ear to the ground, that can present us with some novel ways of dealing with families and youth crime and African American violence, then I want to hear from them.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. Chief, I can appreciate everything that you've said, and I think you hit the nail on the head when I talk so often about parental involvement.
Yes, ma'am.
You can spend all the money in the world, but if you don't have parental involvement, you're wasting your money. And I say that from experience. I have 6 adult children. I have 4 sons that never saw the light of no kind of criminal institution. And it has to be parental involvement. And this is what I would like to see, some of the PIT money transferred. Another thing that I'm concerned about, and I know that you didn't name this, but Dr. White did, Cradle to the Prison. It makes me bored every time I hear that. That's stupid. Why would you want to name a program Cradle to the Prison? It's an insinuation that that's where you're going, or either to hell. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I think we want to cradle to college, so that's probably the real direction that we're going. Or cradle to career, yes. Vice Mayor Hines, second time around for everybody.
Yes, well, I'm going to keep my, Director Warwick, I certainly meant no disrespect to Southwest Little Rock. I was referring to, we've had incidents in West Little Rock recently and the most recent.
Ooh.
Yes, ma'am.
Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
And to help Director Wyrick out, and Director Hines, we are West Central in Ward 6. So we are not Southwest Little Rock, and we are not West Little Rock, we're West Central. So, thank you.
Director Richardson.
Just real quickly, Mayor, I know we're not supposed to start this meeting yet. Director Hendrick, there's an initiative that involves a number of people in this room right now that their mission is to, and pun intended, to arrest the cradle to prison pipeline and replace it with a cradle to career, cradle to college pipeline. And that involves making reforms in a number of different systems, whether it's the educational system, juvenile justice system, how we deliver services. There are a number of entities that need to be reformed in order to make that cradle to career, cradle to college pipeline a reality. And my point, Dean, is that the folks that we're talking about in this room tonight definitely have their ear to the ground. They're out there every day, been out there doing it. And I don't want to minimize the work that they've been doing and the impact they've had on our community. I think it's had a wonderful impact, and I think the chief would agree with me on that as well. So, Chief, thank you once again.
Thank you, and I will be remiss if I didn't say I know that you all have your respective areas that you're responsible for. But when we as a city can have people in Heights and Hillcrest care about an homicide on 12th Street the same way that we do if it was a broken sidewalk in your community, or if Southwest cares about a lady being knocked down in Dillard's and her purse snatched just because it didn't happen down your street. That is part of the problem of why we have these splinters of all of these different organizations, all well-intended, all with the same common destination, and in many instances the same goal, but we're not working together.
And I think that's an important thing to recognize and highlight and acknowledge that a lot of these programs are not working in silos, they're not working in isolation, that they are working in coordination to in fact have that system impact, that system reform to help improve the outcomes for a lot of marginalized children, youth, and family. And I think that's the part that is not understood or advertised enough, or not even celebrated enough. And I think that's one of the things we need to take time and celebrate what we're doing, how we've been able to do it, and what we've accomplished, and acknowledge that so that we can in fact realize and recognize that we are having an impact on marginalized children, youth, and families.
Thank you.
Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think, Chief, you make an interesting point, and that is that those of us who are at large and represent the entire city are no different from people who live in all areas of this city. Anytime there's a story in the paper about violent crime involving young children especially, we get reports of concern from everywhere. Listening to all this, I know both of you have probably one of the toughest jobs around, and that is there are lots of people out there that know more about how you ought to do your job than you do. And there are a lot of opinions. But both of you are relatively new in your positions in this town. And I think two bright men with the backgrounds that you have, I'd love to follow up on what Director Campuris said, see what kind of out-of-the-box thinking the two of you could bring back to this board where, maybe the budget's not there, maybe other things are not there, but that kind of innovative out-of-the-box thing, I'd like to hear, and then maybe we can try to find a way to implement some of it, because obviously some of the things we've been doing aren't working. So something new that goes down a new path, I think, would make a lot of sense. And to the extent you have time, I'd love for you to spend an afternoon brainstorming and see what you come up with.
We're actually working on some of those things. One of my jobs is to try to put the right people on the bus, and once I get the right people on the bus, make sure that they're sitting in the right seat. Captain Tanya Washington runs the vast majority of our juvenile programs. She's working on some out-of-the-box creative things, researching things around the country, and she's going to bring those things to the executive staff at some point here in the near future to talk about some of those things. I'll be more than happy to share those with you.
Thank you. Director Webb, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Chief, and thank you, Baker. I like good to great and also try to have the right people on the right bus, and I have the privilege of representing the Heights and Hillcrest, among other areas in my ward, and I would like to say that some innovative thinking is going on in those two areas to work at Hall High School. And I live in the Hall High School neighborhood. Dean and I were both alums of Hall. Carol is an alum. We have a new group there. So folks from the Heights and Hillcrest are over at Hall High School talking to the kids, talking to the teachers. We've got 17 mentors who have signed up just in the last month or so, and they're on a daily basis. There was a young man at Hall who had a court appearance, and his mentor said he would like to go with him, and the young man was stunned that somebody would go with him to court. So I think some innovative things are happening, and that's one of them. And yes, we should have done it a lot sooner, but as Baker said, we have to have the will to make things happen. I think conversations like this are helpful, and I too would like to see what Director Campuris, I'd like to to see some more discussion along those lines. But thank you both for being here.
Like I said, the OK program is our model for how we reach out to youth. I often use Heights and Hillcrest as an example of collective impact. When there's something wrong in that community, you don't get one email, you get 200 emails, because they understand that collectively, that's how you get things done. And when I'm in communities to where they're not working together, I often will point them to attend some of the neighborhood association meetings in those areas because they know how to fight. And that's one of the things that we've really been pushing. And I agree with all of you in that we need to have more of these PIT type programs to help us with that. But the true moving the ball down the field, I still will tell you, is the best program that was ever created, and that is a mother and a father.
Well, thank you, Chief, and I can tell you, and I know you started out your comments by saying that when we have a bad weekend, it raises the awareness community wide about issues, and I just want to tell you I appreciate the progress. If you're going to be able to get down somewhere in the vicinity of 15,000 offenses reported, I can tell you that in 1993, when I was the prosecuting attorney, there were over 23,000 that were reported, and so there's been a huge progression downward on it. And I know, as you mentioned, it's a tragedy that anyone's life is ever taken by a homicide. But I can't help but notice that there was a 32% reduction from the year previous, from our 2015 numbers. And
Yes, sir.
if you look at it over time, it's going in the right direction, and that doesn't mean that we shouldn't work on this. I mean, about a third of them were domestic violent related in terms of the homicide. So I know when we talk about juveniles and we talk about them in terms of violent crime, but we've got a real issue with domestic violence in here in this city, and we need programs that really address that from a prevention standpoint, so that when people have a disagreement and they have an argument and they lose control, that they're not doing it with a weapon of one fashion or another. So thank you, and I hope you'll look at that in terms of new programs too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for those of you in the audience that were here for those presentations, we're going to move into our board meeting here in just a moment, and I'll give you a chance to leave if you'd like, or you're welcome to stay. If you all will continue to move through the hallway, please. Thank you. All jammed up, yeah. Okay, welcome to the rest of you that are here for the Board of Directors meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask that the clerk read the roll, please.
Director Hendricks, Director Richardson, Director Webb, Director Kazor, Director Wright, Director Wyrick, Director Campuris, Director Fortson, Director Adcock, Vice Mayor Hines, Mayor Stola.
Here. Let me now call on City Director Joan Adcock, please, for our invocation.
Praise you for all that you have done for us and all you've given us. We praise you, O Lord, for the beautiful day today and the weather this week. We ask you, Lord, to bless our meeting tonight and be with each of us as we vote. But also, Lord, we ask you to be with Mr. Kearse and our chief as they put together some ideas to bring back to us. Because, Lord, we are so concerned about our youth and about our city. Guide and direct us tonight. And for our employees, be with them, Lord. They give so much to our city, and we know that our greatest asset in this city is the employees. Guide and direct this meeting. Put your hand on each of us as we do your business here. We ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. If you would, please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a seat.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Okay, we have one presentation that we'd like to do this evening. Let me call on Bruce Moore, our city manager, for the honors. Bruce?
Mayor, members of the board, today we are honoring Jim Bradshaw. Jim has 33 years of service with the city, retired late last year. Some of his awards and honors include a certified risk manager, a certified insurance counselor. He's also a certified professional by International Public Management Association for Human Resources. Jim had a long history of service on the Union Rescue Mission Board. He also served on the board of the Arkansas Employee Federal Credit Union, and he was appointed by Governor Mike Huckabee to the State Rehabilitation Council. And another honor that he says is he learned Spanish well enough to fill calls for several departments and agencies, and even to marry a native Honduran. His favorite memory of working for the city is a lot of special colleagues, some long gone, and many of whom became friends and will be remembered for a long time. As far as his plans for retirement, there's a book that has to be written about his daughter, who was born in Honduras, and her health situation and how she came to the best place on the planet for a child with her condition. And plus, he has a long honeydew list. At this time, let me ask the Director of HR to come forward, Stacey Witherall.
Mayor Stola, Board of Directors. It is our honor to recognize Jim Bradshaw tonight. You have seen him over the last 33 years, for those that are on the board, as he came to you to present various contracts. Probably the most noteworthy would be the health insurance, of course. We will miss Jim. He has a wealth of institutional knowledge. He has also helped us appreciate a good pun here or there, and also just a wealth of trivia. If you'll just ask him, he'll probably share. I noticed that on his favorite memory of working for the city weren't those meetings like this, when he would come before you and ask for approval to move forward with a contract here or two. But we are very proud and very happy for Jim, and we do appreciate his 33 years of service with the city of Little Rock.
Jim, on behalf of the city of Little Rock, I want to thank you for 33 dedicated years. As you often hear me say, the HR department is such a critical department in our organization. It's really the backbone of the organization. So thank you for your service and best of luck in retirement.
Thank you all very much, Mayor, board members. About this time, 34 years ago, I saw a little ad in the paper advertising for a personnel technician, and I thought to myself, gee, that will help pay for grad school and get a little more experience on my resume, and I'll just see where it takes me. And almost 34 years later, I was still answering the same phone number in the office. But I learned a lot over that time, saw those several certifications. I saw the beginnings of the health fair and our vaccination programs and wellness programs that I'm convinced have saved our employees many episodes of illness and have saved healthcare program lots of dollars. I've seen our work comp program recognized a couple of times by Risk and Insurance magazine as being among the very best in the country, and lots of other things that have gone on. But, you know, even as a kid, I noticed many of the world's most famous professional athletes, when they came to retire, said it wasn't fun anymore. And I think there There were things I saw that made it not be so much fun anymore. There's always more regulations, and seemingly one group played against another group. But since 1987, a little ways into that career, I've come before this board at least 100 times with recommendations for various contracts. And you know, there's only been one time that the contract was not eventually passed. Now, unfortunately, that one was the train wreck we had with healthcare last year, and I won't spend a lot of time talking about that, but it was not one of the most fun years that we've had dealing with healthcare. And I will say that over the past few years, to me, it appeared that many times a lot of the questioning from the board to staff members have become a little more pointed. And please, ladies and gentlemen, understand that these people that come before you with those things are dedicated professionals, and they may not have the 99% record of getting their materials past the board, but I think more than 99% of the time they have the same goal as you do of bettering this community. The late Professor Warren Bennis, who is a guru of leadership and management, said that managers do things right and leaders do the right things. And I'm sure there are plenty of things that some would say I didn't get done right, but I just pray that most of what I accomplished was the right thing. And I'll only take another minute or two, drawing to a close, bring to mind probably the greatest catcher in the history of baseball, Yogi Berra, better known for his Yogi-isms. And Yogi said, in describing how to get to his house, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. It was very funny until you realize he lived on a circle drive. And either way you went, the scenery was different, but you came to the same conclusion. So I've come to a fork in the road, and I'm going to take it. And I'm not sure what the scenery will be, but I'm sure that there will be more adventures along the way. And I'm convinced that the greatest of life's adventures are on the very far edge of what many would call normal. And I'm sure my colleagues and former colleagues will agree that normal doesn't describe me as well as other words. But I won't be so bold as to quote the loser of the 1960 presidential election, who suggested he'd not be around to be kicked around anymore. And I already know of several opportunities I'll probably have to be back in City Hall and stand before you again, but for different reasons entirely. But I will leave you with one last quote that I'm convinced is the truth. The Apostle Paul wrote very boldly to the Roman Christians that all things work together for good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose. So I'm confident that whichever pathway that fork takes me, that it will be for good and everything will work out fine. And with that, I bid you good evening and good luck. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jim.
And thanks to all of you for coming out to see me this evening.
I think there's several folks from the HR department that are here. If you'd stand. Yeah. They were here. Okay. They want to retire too, Jim. Did you bring any of your family with you?
I did not. Wasn't able to. My daughter was sick this morning, and with school activities and various things, I had to make it by myself this evening.
Okay, well, best of luck to you.
Okay,
Thank you for being here. Okay, we can now move on to our agenda, and you have a modification page with a request for a resolution and ordinance to be added. Is there a motion? There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. We'll add the resolution to our consent agenda and,
I'd ask M1, resolution be held separate.
all right, okay, we've got a request to keep it separate, so we'll do that after we do the consent agenda. And then we'll add the ordinance
To group.
M2
to the grouped items, if there's no objection. Okay, Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the consent agenda, items 1 through 3, please.
The consent agenda consists of a resolution to authorize the city manager to enter into contracts for housing opportunities for persons with AIDS in a total amount not to exceed $487,500 for 1 year, with the city's option to renew the term for 2 additional 1-year increments and for the purposes. A resolution to certify local government endorsement of Hillcrest CAM Services located at 5502 West 65th Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, to participate in the Arkansas Tax Back programs is authorized by Section 15-4-2706D of the Consolidated Incentive Act of 2003, and for the purposes. A resolution authorizes the city manager to award a contract to Hydco Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $891,807 for the construction of the Clinton Island pedestrian bridge, and for the purposes. That concludes the consent agenda.
Move for the adoption of consent agenda.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt the consent agenda. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The consent agenda is adopted. We can now move on to the grouped items, 4, 5, and the addition of M2, please. First reading.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development establish a plan commercial district titled Service King, revised short form PDC, located at 12,208 West Markham Street, Little Rock, Arkansas, amending the official zoning map of the city of Little Rock, Arkansas, and for the purposes. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural, fire, and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes. An ordinance to authorize the purchase of necessary MF Visual COBOL for Windows compilers from N4 Public Sector, to waive competitive bids as impractical and infeasible, to declare an emergency, and for the purposes. First reading.
Move we suspend the rules and place on second reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on second reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Second reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development establish a plan commercial district titled Service King, revised short form PDC, located at 12,208 West Markham Street. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural, fire, and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures. An ordinance to authorize the purchase of necessary MF Visual COBOL for Windows compilers from N4 Public Sector, to waive competitive bids as impractical and infeasible. Second reading.
Move we suspend the rules and place on third and final reading.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to suspend the rules and place these ordinances on third and final reading. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Third and final reading, please.
An ordinance to approve a plan zoning development establish a plan commercial district titled Service King, revised short form PDC, located at 12,208 West Markham Street. An ordinance to condemn certain structures in the city of Little Rock, Arkansas with structural, fire, and health hazards, to provide for summary abatement procedures, to direct city staff to take such action as is necessary to raise and remove said structures, to declare an emergency. An ordinance to authorize the purchase of necessary MF Visual COBOL for Windows compilers from N4 Public Sector, to waive competitive bids as impractical and infeasible, to declare an emergency. Third and final reading.
We've had 3 readings. There are no questions. All in favor of the passage of these ordinances indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ordinances have passed. On ordinance number 5, on the emergency clause, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is passed on item 5, and on ordinance M2, on the emergency clause, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The emergency clause is also passed. Thank you. We can now move on to the additional resolution, and Madam Clerk, if you would read the resolution, please.
Which one, 6 or M1? M1.
M1, yes, please.
A resolution authorizes the city manager to enter into a contract with Nielsen Nygaard in the amount of $75,770 plus contingencies to work with the City of Little Rock elected officials and staff to conduct a comprehensive review of the 30 Crossing project and make recommendations regarding actions that the city should take with respect to the project and for the purposes.
Okay, we've had a reading of it. Vice Mayor Hines, did you have a question?
Bruce, I just want some clarification. Maybe I didn't understand exactly what we were doing. I was under the impression we were hiring a staff urban planner, not a consultant. So, and maybe something got lost in the communication.
When you say a staff,
Well, I thought we were going to put somebody permanently on staff as an urban planner to deal with city issues going forward.
I'm not sure I was aware of that aspect of it. When we talked about this, I don't know, 6 or 7 weeks ago, it was. I think I stated then that we were going to put out a request for qualifications to help us kind of review the project. So it wasn't my intention to bring on a staff person during this process.
Okay. Well, and I guess it raises the question, we've got AHTD and we've got Metro Plan that have both looked at this. And of course, they've got two opposing viewpoints on it. And I just question, are we not throwing good money after bad with the 75? And what's the time frame on this? I mean, we've got, I think, a meeting. Or is he going to be, would they be able to wrap this up in time for, I think, what's the new date from AHTD? April 1st?
No.
Or
I can tell you the city manager worked on this issue with the selection and within a 90-day time frame.
So that's correct. Once we got into this and when you all agreed to defer the resolution from Director Webb and Director Richardson, there will be some overlap, but we were able to narrow it down to 90 days from the day that we signed this. So we worked hard on getting that. So will we have the final plan in place from the consultants by the time you all are supposed to reconsider the resolution? We won't. We'll be fairly close, probably 30 days out. So I would come back to you all and ask that you would more than likely defer it for another period of time. But that's why we worked very hard to get it, and that's why we added it today, so we can get the process going.
All right. Yeah. One other question. So as I'm reading through our write-up, and the devil's always in the details, undertaking key stakeholder interviews. What does that mean? I mean, you've got AHTD who's been engaged in almost a 2-year stakeholder engagement across the region. I kind of like a little more details on this. I'm not.
Sure.
There's just some confusion. I thought we were going to a permanent staff person. Like I say, I'm a little that this came out so quick. But what does that mean under key stakeholder interviews?
Sure. They propose to work with owners, developers, cultural representatives, public officials, you all. That was very close, a very important element of the whole dialogue, that the city board be fully engaged. And one of the first things they're going to do, Vice Mayor, is to review, and they already have started to review all of the documents that have already been presented. So we're not reinventing the wheel, so to speak. I think they're going to look at the documents, visit with key stakeholders that I just mentioned, and help the city develop a plan that we can make some recommendations regarding the project moving forward.
Okay. So you feel it's imperative from your timetable you've got set that we pass this tonight?
I do. If we won't meet again until March the 1st, which it just pushes the clock back even further at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
You know, there was never an intention to hire another urban planner. It was really to try and make sure that as this board ultimately has to weigh in on this issue, that we have a transportation planning organization, a planner, if you will, that can try and advise us. Now, I hope everybody can come to some consensus on this, and there's been some big strides made, I think, already. But as it relates to whatever ingress, egress issues there are from the west side to the east side and vice versa, all of those issues are very, very important. The design issues are important, and frankly, as a city, we need some help from somebody that's an expert in those areas, which is why this is so important.
Well, Mayor, I mean, then I call into question, what exactly is Metro Plan's role in this? I thought they were supposed to be doing that for us. Do we not like the answer that they have given us on this deal?
Well, there are some people who like the answer and some people that don't like the answer, and ultimately, hopefully, we'll be able to sift through that in one fashion or another and ultimately come up with a decision on this board as it relates to this. But ultimately, MetroPlan will have to be making there'll be some effort to amend a plan at the long-range transportation plan, and the city of Little Rock will be weighing in on that in a very substantial way. I don't think we should do it blindly. I think we should have the best information we can, and I think everybody's going to try and work together on that, including the highway department.
Thank you.
Director Kazort, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mayor. And I don't think I have necessarily an opposition to this. I will concur with the Vice Mayor that what I heard when we had that presentation from the Highway Department was that we were looking at hiring a permanent urban planner, for lack of a better term. So I was a little surprised that this was a contractual deal for this one issue, because I thought we were talking about having somebody on staff to help with this type of issue and others that came before us. I do have some concerns about their ability to fulfill their task by the time the Highway Department has sifted through some of the changes that have been recommended to them and come back with us. But Bruce, if you think this is, and Mayor, I mean, if you all think this is imperative to get us to a point that we've got better input, I'll support it. But again, I also heard that we were talking about a permanent employee.
Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I had the same wrong misunderstanding regarding this particular item. I thought, in fact, that we were looking at a staff position, because I didn't think it was couched within the narrow frameworks of this one particular item, that it was couched in a larger framework that we're looking at overall growth and development, how this fits into what we're doing with the ongoing urban planning, ongoing urban development. And I thought the answer was given to me in response to a question I had about the resolution that Director Webb and I had sponsored. So much like my good friend Brad, if you guys think this is the correct way to move forward and the most effective, efficient way to move forward, I'm supportive of it, but I do have some questions and whether or not this is money well spent. I mean, I thought we were talking about an urban planner. We were talking about something in a larger conceptual framework. And that, it was couched to me when we talked about the resolution that night when I was told that the resolution that Director Webb and I had sponsored was kind of premature. There are some other items we had to go through and some other things we need to go through before we can move forward with that and to get additional input. I, too, like my good friend Lance and Brad, had the wrong misunderstanding on this particular item.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. My concern for 75,000, is this for how long a period? Is this 1 day, 1 month? What is this?
Again, we negotiated a 90-day time frame to try to be close to the time that you all would be rehearing the resolution.
To be honest with you, I think that's too much money spent in such a short time.
Well, there's several people that will be involved in it. I mean, it's not just one individual.
Oh, I know it's a company, I would imagine. Is it a company, Mr. Moore?
Correct. It's a joint partnership. You have about 3 or 4 different companies that will be participating as part of the team.
For all of this money, how many minorities would be participating?
I don't know, Director Hendricks.
We need to know that. When these things come before us, we never know who's participating. And I think with everybody knows that that's a concern of mine. I'm not just sitting here for flow show. I'm sitting here for progress. So you don't know, no, I can't support this.
Director Webb, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, the Vice Mayor and I have not agreed on a lot of aspects of the I-30 discussion, but I totally agree with what he said tonight. And I have some concerns. Of course, as the Vice Mayor said, the devil's in the details, but I've been part of an effort, and we've made some phone calls to try to get folks to give us a price for a similar type work, and it was significantly lower than this, but as we say, the devil is in the details, so there could be some details, but it's a very significant price difference between $75,000 and the price I got from somebody who is supposedly, from a variety of sources, one of the highest rated people in the country on doing this kind of work. So I do have a lot of concerns about this, and the misunderstanding that it seems like quite a few of us had.
Director Adcock, you're recognized, please.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Let me just say that this board is going to have to weigh in on a decision that is going to impact the next 50 to 100 years of this city. And, maybe you all believe that you've got all the knowledge that's necessary to make that decision. I can tell you that as the mayor, I want to get the best information that's possible by people who've done this around the country. That's the only reason for doing this, is that we need to make a very good informed decision, and if they can help us do this, then I think it's money very well spent for this city in the future. And that was the purpose of it. I mean, hiring an individual transportation planner that has that knowledge for that amount of money, I'm not going to ask Bruce or Tony, but I suspect it'd be very difficult to find somebody with the depth of knowledge on transportation issues and planning issues that could be able to come in and serve in that kind of a capacity. I just don't think that's very realistic at all. Whether or not somebody could do it cheaper or not, maybe, but they obviously didn't respond to the public bidding process that we're required to go through in terms of qualifications. So I do know that there were national firms that responded to the bid and that are experts in the field, and this is the one that Bruce's committee selected. So I would just urge us to try and make sure that we're vested with as much information as possible to make sure that we make good decisions as it relates to this. So the impact is extraordinarily significant in the future. So there's been a motion and a second. Director Adcock, did you still have another question?
No, that was.
All in favor of the passage of the motion or the resolution indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, saying nay. Nay. Okay. Roll call requested, Madam Clerk.
Director Hendricks. Director Richardson. Director Webb. Director Kazor. Director Wright. Director Wyrick. Director Campiris. Director Fortson. Director Adcock. Vice Mayor Hines. 8-2.
By a vote of 8-2, the resolution is passed. And I know Bruce will get to work on this right away. Thank you, Bruce. Okay, we can now move on to resolution number 6.
Mayor, the board has before it some language that was modified today. Director Wright had asked that the resolution definitely not apply to a particular development across the street because it was already pretty much underway. I had changed some language. The attorney for the developer did not feel that he was protected, so he and I spoke today and modified the language, which is what you should have before you.
We don't have anything.
I gave it back to you.
Okay, well, it's being passed out now.
I sent it with.
What would I do with it? That's why I said pass it, hand it to you.
No, I sent it to you electronically today.
I know, it's linked.
Okay, but they don't have it.
No.
Okay, it was linked, but y'all don't have it. And to make it even more clear, there's only 9 of those copies, so
Can you click on the link?
I'll share.
if you'll click on the link.
Would you address, Tom, the particular language that you've added?
I will, Mayor. That's what I was going to do. Before I do that, I want you to look at line 29 on the first page. That's not the resolution. Okay.
Oh, I formatted it, so it.
Go ahead, Mr. Carpenter. What are we doing?
On this line 27, the third word in is a not. That is not, that needs to be marked out. The change was the proviso, which starts on line 25. Provided this moratorium does not apply to any multifamily development for which zoning has been approved and the developer has materially changed circumstances prior to the effective date of this resolution, or are damaged after the date of this resolution and the repair of such damages necessitates appropriate building permits. That is designed to do two things: not to apply to the development across the street, and it's also to make sure that if there is damage by fire or wind or anything else to an existing facility and the damages are significant and they have to get building permits and so forth, that they are not covered by this moratorium.
All right, so the word is to be stricken, the word not is to be stricken in line 27. Thank you, Mr. Carter, for highlighting that. Director Fortson, yes, you have a question, please?
Mr. Mayor, the copy that was distributed, I have in front of me, the word not is not even on line 27.
No, it's on line 29 in yours, and it's on line 29 in mine. I didn't realize it had been reformatted since.
Okay, it's on line 29 in the printed version and on line 27 in the version on our screens.
And this is my fault because I didn't send it down in the right format.
Okay, is there any other?
Again, does this moratorium is not
It does not include
anything that's in the pipeline?
the development across the street, which is all that we know that's in the pipeline, or anything that's damaged. It would include the Brody Creek Point, I think is the name of it.
The pending.
That's pending, because the zoning has not been approved for that.
It's Herrick Heights, I think, is the actual name.
Okay.
Director Kazort, you're recognized, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And as I said last week, I'm not in any substance necessarily opposed to the concept of a moratorium. I am opposed to the current language, in that I don't think we've ever had a moratorium before, that we've cut somebody off in the process of while they're in the pipeline. I understand he hadn't got zoning approval yet, and he may well not get zoning approval. But and Tom and I will agree that he has no right to it, but I do think he has a right to this board saying yay or nay. I can't support it as long as it says that. I would offer an amendment to this resolution that would also have it not apply to any applicant who has already filed the necessary paperwork as of the time this resolution passed. And I'll let Tom figure out the exact language. In other words, it will not apply to anything that's currently in the applications have been filed and the things in the pipeline for approval.
Is there a second to that amendment? There's a second. Okay, any discussion on the amendment? Director Wyrick, you're recognized, please.
Okay, I haven't seen the application. The only map I have, or the profile I have of this, is in the traffic study that was given to us. And are there several phases to this? And the application that's before us, is it for a singular phase, or is it for the three phases, it looks like, that are in this one development?
Mr. Moore, I believe it's for just one single phase, but do you want to elaborate on that?
Mr. Brzezinski, I think it's.
Right, it's about the one that's been through the Planning Commission. Well, there's an amendment that would affect that. So yes, go ahead.
Director Wyrick, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the board, the application that's being discussed is for a site of 70 acres.
Okay.
There's different elements to the mixed-use plan. A portion of it is for the multifamily development. Another area set aside for either single-family or a residential development not to exceed 6 units per acre. And then a tract that fronts on Bowman Road is either for O1 uses or, again, potentially residential uses not to exceed 6 units per acre.
And that's all in the application that's in the pipeline
Right.
now?
For the entire 70 acres is part of the application.
Okay. See, the reason I wanted to know that is because if that's going to be, if it's in the pipeline, it's going to exclude the whole development. I wanted to know that. Thank you. Thank you, Director Hines, Vice Mayor Hines.
Mr. Brzezinski, 1 minute, please. Yeah. So that 70 acres is the, and the uses were all through the Planning Commission, is that correct?
Yes, it's
Okay.
one
And to the board
unified.
for the ordinance that's on our agenda next week?
Right.
Okay. Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Mr. Carpenter was about to say something.
I was just trying to say, to accomplish the amendment by Director Kazort, I think you would now look at the proviso, provided this moratorium does not apply to any multifamily development which has been approved by the Planning Commission prior to the effective date of this resolution, comma, or is damaged, and so forth.
All right. I think everybody understands what the amendment is. Okay. Go ahead, Director Wright.
Thank you. Director Kazort, my constituents are concerned about what's getting ready to go in and with what's under construction. So I would prefer that the moratorium not be amended, but it's up to the will of the board. I understand your concerns and I respect those. However, I have to respect what my constituents are telling me, that they would like to see us study this thing before we approve any additional multifamily.
All right. Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
Well, part of my question, Mayor, has been answered, but I have another question. That it takes 6 votes to pass this resolution. It takes 6 votes to approve or disapprove the application that is pending and will be heard at some point in time, right? I've had the same concerns Director Kazort has, and that is that most of my communications from people have been in opposition to what they refer to as the Richardson development, and this moratorium is far broader than that, and I think that the proper approach would be to take a look at that pending application and rather deal with that with a laser-like approach rather than such a broad brush. My only concern about moratoriums is they are much further reaching than just the Richardson application. And they deal with providing, I suppose, anybody else in the apartment business along that corridor with a monopoly, which is neither here nor there from that standpoint. But the other part of it is there are traffic considerations and a lot of things that I think need to be considered in the long run on Bowman Road. But I think in the process of agreeing to consider that, we are considering the Richardson application without really considering it. And I'm not too sure changing the rules in the middle of the game is exactly fair. I think it deserves to be considered and voted up or down based on its own merits.
All right. Well, we're speaking on the amendment, which is to take that application out of the process, out of the coverage of this particular resolution. Director Richardson, you're recognized, please.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Point of clarification, I have no investment in this development, nor am I related to Mr. Richardson. So before someone asks Tom to issue an opinion on whether or not I can talk about this issue tonight, I do have a brother named Keith Richardson, but it's not this Keith Richardson. If it was, I certainly wouldn't be a public servant. I'd be sitting in Jamaica somewhere. I'm not related to this gentleman, and I have no investment, none whatsoever, in this development, Tom. So I want to make that point of clarification for this whole discussion tonight.
Director Campuris, you're recognized, please.
Well, I agree with both Gene and the maker of and Brad. I think it is a dangerous precedent to have something come along, be past some point where it started, and then bring this in at this point in time, because I can see every time we have something that's controversial, someone coming up and saying, I want to look at a traffic study again. And I don't think that is a fair way of doing it. I'm for your moratorium. I think it's a fine thing to do. I think that area needs to be studied. But I think fairness has to play a hand in this. And I'm sorry, Doris, I just think that studying the area, I'll vote for that. And if the amendment passes, I will be glad to move forward with that period of time. But I don't think, in fairness and also for what we're going to do in the future, that if this comes up every time as a maneuver to stop something, we're going to be in real trouble.
Okay, Director Wright, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Director Campiris, I respect, of course, your opinion. However, please remember and recall that Mr. Richardson pulled his application voluntarily. If he had not done so, it would have already been voted on by now. He did that. So just keep that in mind. We would have voted on his application by now. So I don't think that this is out of a sequential order that we would normally take. I mean, that was his decision. But regardless, we can vote it up or down, and we can call the question.
Vice Mayor Hines, you're recognized, please.
Director Wright, I'd like to remind you, the reason he asked for a deferral was to try to gain consensus with the neighborhood, which is what we ask all of our developers to do, to meet with the neighborhoods, the neighbors, work with them to find out a plan that will be mutually acceptable by both parties. That's why he delayed, and then we have a tactic to place a moratorium that kills his up or down vote in the process before he's had time to, and I think he's still got ongoing communications with this neighborhood to try to work out some resolution with the traffic and everything under his application.
I'm aware of that. I'll call the question.
Director Adcock.
I think Director Wright has called the question.
What?
She's called the question.
Well, I didn't hear a second, so you had your light on, so I'm calling on you. If you want to speak.
Tony or Mr. Moore, tell us about the meetings that Mr. Richardson has had with the neighborhood since we deferred it.
Well, no, we're simply on the amendment now. We're simply on the amendment.
Not on the merits of
So
the application.
let's see whether this amendment is added or not. The amendment is to exempt from this ordinance, and Tom read the language, I think, very accurately, to exempt from this resolution, rather, any developments that have been through the Planning Commission.
Do you have any cards on this, Mayor?
I got several cards, and we'll call on those once we find out whether this amendment passes or not.
I'd rather do the cards first before the amendment.
No, they don't know what they're speaking on.
We don't know
I
what
think
they're
the people
speaking.
always know what they're speaking on, Director Gazort.
Okay. Okay, we've had an amendment made. It's been seconded. We've had discussion. All in favor of the amendment indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
No.
Let's go ahead and call the roll on this.
You're voting on the amendment.
Speak the amendment.
On the amendment.
And that's the amendment that was made by Brad?
Yes.
Okay.
Director Hendricks,
Present.
Director Richardson,
Yes.
Director Webb,
No.
Director Kazort,
Yes.
Director Wright,
No.
Director Wyrick,
No.
Director Campuris,
Aye.
Director Fortson,
Aye.
Director Adcock,
No.
Vice Mayor Hines.
Yes.
Mayor?
Director Hendricks, would you like to change your vote?
Yes.
What do you want to change it to?
Yes. It's aye.
Okay.
By a vote of 6-4, the amendment has passed. So we now have a resolution requesting moratorium as amended. And I have several cards who wish to speak, or may still wish to speak. Clark Cogbill, let me call on you first.
Did we vote right? No. I don't want to put in because
Thank you, City Board, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Moore. Thank you for your time. And first of all, I just want to open by saying thanks for the service that you provide to our city. I know you get a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls on various items, and I appreciate personally what you do for our fine city. I am a resident of the Woodlands Edge neighborhood, and I think sometimes we have a habit of thinking of things very selfishly or personally, and I've tried to take a step back and look at this from a bigger picture perspective. I drive on Bowman Road daily to and from work, and I'm sure many of you do as well. If you do, you know that it really is, for the most part, a two-lane country road. I do love to see development in this city, my home. I do have a concern about the planning that has gone into the development and the traffic that comes along with that. So we have a large apartment complex that has recently been opened up, the Point at Brody Creek. There's one under construction with hundreds of units right across the street from it, as I know you're aware, and there's one further south on Bowman near Colonel Glenn, which is going to have hundreds of units. And then there's now a new proposed complex right next to Brody Creek. I think I speak for many of us who are concerned about traffic. I think about safety vehicles and their ability to get in and out of our neighborhood. I don't know what the impact will be, but I know that traffic already backs up on northbound Bowman, beginning at the intersection of Canis and Bowman, today during certain periods of the day. A city engineer shared a traffic study with me, and I'm not a city engineer, I'm not an engineer, but it seemed to indicate that there was already a significant amount of traffic on Bowman today. So I have some concerns there, and I also have concerns about maybe generating cut-through traffic through the neighborhood, and that's certainly legal and okay, but it diminishes a neighborhood. And I personally feel that Woodlands Edge and Brody Creek are, great neighborhoods, not because they are nice in terms of affluency, but it's one of the better neighborhoods in our city, I feel like, just because of the feeling of community. And I think many of us are just concerned about the future of that, and that one more apartment complex could be a tipping point for the quality of the neighborhood and the people who love to live there. So that is all I have to share today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cogbill. The next card I have is from either William or Terry Phillips. William?
Yes, sir.
Welcome.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for allowing me the time to speak before you. I moved to Little Rock in 2006. I'm not from the city, but I've grown to love the city. I moved here specifically because of the feeling and everything that happens here. But I'm from Atlanta, and as I'm sure you all know, Atlanta is ripe with traffic. I currently live in St. Charles neighborhood, and we have several multifamily apartment communities around our neighborhood. And my street, which is St. Charles, has become one of those cut-through streets, as you've just heard mentioned. I've seen what poor planning can do to traffic areas. It's one of the things that forced me from my home that I grew up in, that I loved, and there in Atlanta. I really would strongly encourage you to take a careful look at what this multifamily community could do to the quality of our residents, not just those who are living on Bowman, but those of us who are around there. And I really think it'll have a negative effect on our property values and the quality of life for those of us who have chosen to live here. And I again refer back to Atlanta, ladies and gentlemen. Poor planning has caused a traffic nightmare, and good people like me who grew up in the city have been forced to move away. I love Little Rock, and I want to see it continue to grow, but with careful planning. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Phillips. Jamie Shipley is next, please.
Hi. Thank you very much for the opportunity. I have to say that I'm incredibly disappointed in the previous vote. I'm not sure what good a moratorium will do for our neighborhood if this development is allowed to continue first. The problem that we have is traffic. We have two apartments has already set, or two complexes as already mentioned that are already under development that are not yet open that will add hundreds of cars on Bowman every day. It's already difficult to make a left-hand turn out of Brody Creek. The Woodlands Edge people use Brody Creek to exit. You can't make a left-hand turn at certain times of the day. If you come off of Executive to get back into the neighborhood, it's also very difficult. As I understand, there are no plans for traffic lights at Bowman and Executive. There's not really a plan for what to do for us to get out of our neighborhood, either onto Bowman or onto Canis. It's also very difficult to make a left-hand turn there. And at certain times of the day, very difficult to make a right-hand turn. So we live in a neighborhood where we're going to be bound within our neighborhood. I watched a school bus this afternoon try and take a left-hand turn out of Brody Creek onto Bowman. Think about that. It happens every day. It happens multiple times a day. It's a two-lane road. There are no shoulders. There are ditches. At one point, there's a bridge. If there's a traffic accident, nobody moves. You just sit there. There's already a rehabilitation center and a nursing home that need ambulance services. It's very difficult. And I think there's this perception that we're against apartments. We're not against apartments. I've said this multiple times. We're against the density of apartments on one stretch of road that simply can't handle the traffic. There were several phrases that I heard tonight that I wanted to just mention. Urban planning, that's what we're asking for, and you can't urban plan if you don't stop and think about what you're doing. The old way isn't working, so let's try something new. Instead of saying yes or no willy-nilly as projects come up, let's talk about what we want Little Rock to be. Let's talk about what Atlanta was and what we don't want Little Rock to become. A comprehensive planning strategy is all that we're asking for. And then the gentleman who retired after 30 years of service said something that I thought was really important. Managers do things right. Leaders do right things. And all that we had asked was to take the time to do the right thing, to look at how that neighborhood, that stretch of road was being utilized, and to give some thought and consideration to the people who already live there. Thank you very much.
Let's keep our decorum, please. I know people feel passionately about this, but I'd ask you not to be applauding after every speaker. David Shipley, please.
First of all, I want to say thank you all for the opportunity to speak. Jamie's my better half.
Yeah, pull the mic.
Oh, pull it up. Okay, I'm sorry. Jamie's my better half. I'm the lucky half in this pair. We're a young family. We have young kids. We're here to ask the city to really think about large apartment complexes, South Bowman, not just Woodlands Edge, not just Brody Creek, but also Sandpiper, Cherry Creek. There's a lot of good neighborhoods of all price points in that area that use Bowman. Traffic is increasing on Bowman every day. We looked for a car this weekend. Every car lot down on Colonel Glenn told us, drive up Bowman, you'll test your new car out on the curvy roads in the hills where there are no ditches, there are hills, bad roads. So there's a real traffic thing. Where is our fire station? We're going to have this concentration of apartments being built next to our neighborhood. Where's the things that protect us? How can we get out of our neighborhood? Let's all work together and think about what's best for Little Rock. Let's look at ways to integrate apartments, not big complexes, but smaller complexes, into neighborhoods that protect property values. So we have a big investment in our homes. And what happens with big complexes is that over time, they rot, they deteriorate, they drag down the areas that are around them. I used to live in Tulsa, Oklahoma. You can go within a mile of Southern Hills Country Club along the Arkansas River, where there's a great river trail system, and see apartments that were built in the 80s, 90s that are now all Section 8, that are all empty because of the crime and the things that came in with that concentration of apartments. That's what we're against. We want to build a community. You know, we choose to live in Little Rock because we like Little Rock, but this is the kind of stuff that makes you think about that. So I urge you all to think about the moratorium. Let's all work together as a community, develop a plan for South Bowman that involves everybody, and let's make the process transparent so we can all be a part of it and not feel like we're being given a short staff. So thank you all very much.
Director Adcock, did you have a question?
Yes,
for
I
this?
do.
Mr.
Sir?
Shipley?
Do you understand the amendment they've put on the moratorium?
Yes, I feel like I do.
Do you still want us to vote for it?
I would like to see the moratorium approved. If not, then maybe kick this back to the Planning Commission. We can all have a chance to really address it, because one of the issues in this has been the process. We as a neighborhood, or as neighbors, didn't find out about it until the day before.
But with this moratorium, Mr. Richardson could go ahead with his apartments.
No, he's got to come get our.
Well, you still have a zoning
Well,
issue.
you
I mean,
still
I,
have a
The
zoning
property
issue.
currently is zoned single-family residence. The moratorium,
Still has to come before us to get approved.
yeah, I was going to mention to all of you, I mean, it sounds like
we're not familiar with how the city,
Well-
this is all new to us, so excuse us for our.
for those
Lack
of
of
you who
experience.
are against apartments or against this apartment project, this will come up before the board at the first meeting in March. And so I think the question that Director Adcock wants to ask, or has asked, is that, anything that was in the pipeline is now accepted out of it. Do you still feel a moratorium in the broader context is appropriate for the general area? And I think that's the nature of her question. I'm going to ask him first.
Yes. I mean, I feel like for the democratic process, let's step back. I wish it was not being amended the way it has been, but let's really look at what's going on in South Bowman. Let's do what's right for Little Rock, what's right for our neighborhoods. And that's our neighborhood, that's Brody Creek, that's Sandpiper, that's Cherry Creek. Let's build a better Little Rock and think about where this will be in 10, 15, 20 years from now.
Okay, thank you.
Director Wright, did you want to
Yes.
make a comment, please?
I would like to respond to Director Adcock, and I would like to let the audience know that the moratorium in Section 2 states as follows: says, during the period of this moratorium, the city manager is to direct his staff to study the area covered by this moratorium and prepare a report for the Board of Directors as to whether any multifamily development in this area is appropriate in light of the following information: traffic patterns in this area and including the neighborhoods of Brody Creek, Sandpiper Creek, Cherry Creek, and Woodlands Edge, drainage issues in the areas noted in subsection A, which is the ones I just mentioned, cut-through traffic in the neighborhoods noted in subsection A during peak traffic times of a given day, an estimate of cost associated with the impacts discovered during this study, and a listing of the steps that would have to be taken to mitigate these impacts, and a recommendation of proposed land use amendments in this area that would be required to preclude future multifamily development if appropriate. So there are other benefits that we can get out of this moratorium. So if we pass this tonight, then the board will have real concrete information, because these units that are under construction will come online. And then staff will be studying the traffic patterns, the amount of traffic, the stacking effect, what improvements are needed. And then when we have our meetings in the community for funding, then we can put forward a plan for Bowman that would allow us to address the major intersections and so forth. So if we pass this, we will have some real data. Okay.
Director Fortson, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. I think Director Wright probably made the point I was going to make. I was going to ask Tom just to make sure we clarify things. If this moratorium passes tonight, on March the 1st, on our agenda is the application for the Herrick, I believe it's called, apartment complex. Is that correct?
Yes.
On that night, there will be a vote either to approve it or disapprove it, or should be unless something else happens. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
So, but after that night, the moratorium would then be in effect for the balance of the 12-month period. assuming it's passed
After
tonight.
tonight, if the moratorium passes, it would be in effect. It would not stop that particular development.
And so if the moratorium is passed tonight and that development is defeated, then we will go for 12 months with the moratorium in effect, and that development's out of the question. If
Yes,
we
sir.
pass the moratorium tonight and that development is approved, then that development will go forward, but nothing else can happen for 12 months until all the conditions Director Wright outlined are fulfilled.
That's correct.
And reported back. It seemed like there was some confusion, and my point all along was I think in fairness, we need to vote that application up or down on its own merits, so it goes away or is approved. Otherwise, it would be hanging there for 12 months and could be brought up at the end of the 12 months. Is that not correct?
Yeah, yes, sir.
Thank you.
Ann Brown Marshall, please.
Thank goodness for that new diet. Well, I'm not going to say what I was going to say, but I do want to say good evening to all of you, and thank you so much for hanging in with us. There's so much that we want to say, and so much of it has already been said very well, but I am Ann Brown Marshall. I lived down in the central part of the city for most of my life. Only recently moved to Brody Creek because that's where our two adorable grandchildren were, and it was time to be Grandmommy and Poppy to them. Thank you, Director White, for your wisdom and for your courage in having brought this potential moratorium forward. Many of you know that I worked many years monitoring the desegregation case. And then after I retired from that field, I worked for the Arkansas School Boards Association to try to help school districts all across the state, and particularly in places like Helena, West Helena, where their problems were almost insurmountable. So there's so much that is a microcosm here in this appeal that we bring to you to stop and think and not do ready, fire, aim. We've got to stop and aim before we explode more people into the situation that we have on Bowman and Canis. In the last very short period of time, we have had a population explosion, some 4,000 apartments in our area, and if that's only 1.5 people per apartment, that's 6,000 people. That's a pretty good-sized town for most of Arkansas. And you've heard an awful lot about the traffic, and it is the truth. And having spent my summers and some of my youth in Southern California, I know all about traffic. I know how to drive on the freeway, but I don't know how to get out on Bowman during peak times. Every single one of you are so dedicated to what our city is all about. But it can never be just about one piece of the city. It has to be about all of us. We're all in this together. I've written to most of you recently, just stating the obvious, and that when one domino falls, so does another. There are always consequences, and so many of them unforeseen because we didn't take the time to do our homework. That's what we're asking for. That's what you, Doris, have been brave enough to propose. And so many of you are, I can tell, very seriously considering. Please do. This is our shared future. This is making decisions about apartments that will affect all of us for a very long time because it's our city. I know you care. Thank you so much for listening. We trust you to do the right thing.
Thank you, Mrs. Marshall. The next card I have is from Casey Covington.
Mayor and Board of Directors, I know many of you, I'm a professional engineer and a planner, and I've sent you several comments regarding this development. I'm a 12-year resident of Little Rock. I'm a 10-year resident of the Cherry Creek subdivision. I'm not going to go on. You've heard the concerns about traffic, about the concentration of apartments. I don't feel the need to rehash that with you and waste your time. I do want to, however, say that as residents of this area, I feel like we owe the opportunity to work with the city on a development plan for our area. And that moratorium that's before you is going to allow that to happen. And so that's all we're asking for. We're asking for an opportunity to take the next 12 months and develop a plan for this area of central West Little Rock. West Central Little Rock. I would like to say to Director Adcock that while I know some of us probably were disappointed in the vote earlier regarding the amendment, I'm fully supportive of this resolution with that amendment, and it is a positive for our development. I would ask for you that the development that has been in question will become up for an up and down vote. We need an up and down vote on that. We don't need to continue to allow that to continue. So I'd ask for you to vote on that next week. I'm going to do something, I don't know if this is appropriate or not, but there's a lot of people here that are for the moratorium. Can everybody stand up that's for the moratorium? Thank you. We all deserve a chance to develop a plan for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Covington. Next card I have is from Sebastian Montez.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you so much for your time and attention. I'm not going to rehash many of the arguments that have already been said tonight, many of which were mine as well. I would like to join my friend from Atlanta, because I used to live in Jersey City. And I like to joke with people, if you don't like Little Rock, go live in Jersey City for 6 weeks, and you're going to learn to love Little Rock. So I've lived in Woodlands Edge for the last couple of years, and I got to say, coming from Jersey City, it is a huge change and a very positive change. So what I'm afraid of, though, is because I've seen the effects of poor planning in Jersey City and other cities. I was in the military for several years, that I would like to do anything and everything that I can to stop this robust building and construction on Bowman Road and Canis, both of roads which affect greatly of many, many neighborhoods in that intersection. Just in the last 12 months, at least 3 different apartments have broken ground on Bowman and on Canis, bringing in hundreds of apartments and thousands of residents, and it's just a matter of time before that happens. So I would just like to, without question, ask that you please approve the moratorium, even with the disappointing amendment. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Montez. The next card I have is from Ruth Bell. Well, Ruth, you know, I shuffle these cards. You know, you shouldn't feel bad that you're
shuffling me out of it, Bear.
Oh, I don't know. I still got a card after you, so don't feel left out.
Okay, as you well know, I'm Ruth Bell, and I usually am tonight representing the League of Women Voters. We support passage of the proposed moratorium because it will give time for City Board and the staff to address the citizen concerns you've heard from tonight. Over the years, the city has struggled to match roadway needs in developing areas with the amount of traffic, the present and future traffic, that the roads must carry. Determining how to site the various categories of residential uses so as to accommodate an urban population and provide an enjoyable quality of life to our residents is a concern of ours and of yours too, I'm sure. We hope that at the end of the moratorium, the city will have made progress in planning for increased traffic and developed guidelines for siting multifamily projects in this predominantly single-family area. We do hope you will pass the resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. The next card and the final card I have is from Jane Evans.
Hi there. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to you. Little Rock has been my home since '86, and I moved here with 2 small children by myself. And a home is, I talked to all of y'all, I think, just about, and I spoke to someone last night, and she'll know exactly who she is. She talked about what a home is and what it means to us. And so therefore our home, yes, we look at our property value. I'm a retired real estate agent, and I do that. But we also go home, and people have something called quiet enjoyment at their homes. And that means you don't get my neighbors don't bother me. I don't bother my neighbors. But apartments, a lot of them have people that are only going to live there for a shorter time. Somebody said, you don't like them? I said, no, there's a time and a place for them. But have them so congested in one area. So I think that Little Rock has the opportunity to be a model for the rest of the city, so that when you come in and you start trying to figure out what to do, that yes, studies need to be done so that we don't just continue. If someone wants to build something in my neighborhood, I can't do just anything I want to do because we have a POA and they're kind of supposed to have a governing board and everything. And that's kind of the way I look at y'all. You kind of help us know that we don't have too many things out there that intrude upon other people's quiet enjoyment. And also, there were 2 wrecks on Bowman Road this past weekend, which that could have been a statistic. That's someone's child. That's someone's parent. And let's see. I'm not a good speaker. I apologize for that. Let's see. The model, that's one of the main things. And I just don't, the water runoff, all those things need to be studied. We don't know enough about going in there and just leveling the land and getting rid of the trees and everything. So much can happen. And I really am concerned about Little Rock. So thank you for considering this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Evans. Thanks to all of you who have offered your comments to us. I know all of the board members take those very seriously. Director Wyrick, Director Wright. Director Wright.
Before we vote, I just want to thank all of you for giving this some really serious thought. I can tell that you did, and I appreciate that. And I'm hopeful that it will pass, and that will give us some time to study the area and develop a plan. And hopefully you all will recall all of the angst over this when we get to looking at funding, because I know there are some citywide funds, and I know we don't have a lot, but this corridor definitely needs some attention. And I know the funds are pulled 100 different ways, but I am going to be asking for some citywide dollars, not just the allocation that goes towards 6, even though some of that money I would be willing to put that towards this. Thank you all, and we have one more shot at this in March. So stay engaged, and I would like to attend the meeting on the 23rd of February, where you all will be talking about meeting with the developer, as I've been told that there will be a meeting, and I'd like to attend that wherever it may be. Okay. That's all I have.
Well, you raised the issue of the meeting. I see Mr. Richardson in the audience. Is that February 23rd? An accurate time and date? What time? What time? 6 o'clock. 6 p.m. on the 23rd.
We haven't heard this. Where? Birdie Creek. Haven't heard this. This is the first time I'm hearing it.
The Property Owners Association, or whoever's running that, has been the person who's been contacted. So let's make sure we get the word out, everybody. I want to make sure everybody has a chance to engage. Director Kazort, you're recognized, please.
Thank you, Mayor. And just again reiterate that we have not approved any development here tonight. And given that I think the resolution has been read, I would now move for the passage and adoption of the resolution.
As amended.
As amended. Thank you.
All right, Vice Mayor Hines wished to speak. Do you want to cut him off?
Oh,
He's already done it. It's been seconded.
yeah, I've never cut him off before, so let me cut him off this time.
There's a motion and a second to call the question. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, saying nay. All right, the question's been called.
Mayor, the motion was to adopt the resolution.
Oh, excuse me.
as
I thought
amended.
you were calling that question first.
Well, I made the motion to adopt the resolution. That was second.
Okay, excuse me. Okay, all in favor of the passage of the resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
Nay. Roll call.
All right, we've been requested for a roll call. Madam Clerk, if you would, please read the roll.
Director Hendricks? Director Richardson? Director Webb?
Yes.
Director Kazort?
Yes.
Director Wright?
Yes.
Director Wyrick? Director Campiris? Director Fortson? Director Adcock? Vice Mayor Hines? Director Hendricks, would you like to change your vote?
By a vote of 7 to 2 to 1 present, the resolution is passed. Is that correct?
Oh, you voted yes?
Yeah, the vote is 8 to
Okay,
2.
Director, are you changing your vote, Director Hendricks?
No.
If you turn your microphone on, please.
Can't hear you.
If you turn your microphone on, please. All right, I thought you voted present to begin with. Is that incorrect?
Yeah.
All right, and how do you wish to vote?
Ask.
Do you wish to change your vote?
Yes,
To what?
yes.
To yes. Okay, by a vote of 8 to 2, the resolution has passed. Thank you. Director Richardson, did you wish to comment on any matter?
Yes, Mayor. On the M1 resolution where we talked about the consultants for the I-30 crossing, I'd like to change my nay vote to a yay with consent of the board.
No objection, very good. We'll change that.
My vote on the first was from a present to yes,
You want to do the same thing?
yes.
On the one that
No, we're
Mr.
talking about the earlier vote, the earlier vote.
The M1 she's talking about,
The
Mayor.
M1, the night.
Voted nay, you didn't vote present.
The 75, I voted present.
Without
Yeah, I voted
objection,
present.
Director Hendricks wishes to also change her vote.
Right, to yes on the 75,000 or 57,000, whatever that was.
Okay, that means it passed by a vote of 10 to nothing.
8 to 2.
Okay, we have citizen communication, and I see a card from Corey Anderson. Is Corey still here? Did he leave? All right, well. All right, the next card I have is from Robert Webb.
He's gone,
Is Robert Webb still here?
he's gone. But no. Thank you much for that. That doesn't stop us.
Well, I'll give him a little bit of,
Okay.
yeah, that's the only one I have.
Yeah.
Mr. Webb, Robert, did you, we're in citizen communication now, and I have your card.
Deal, good deal. It's been a long time. I missed y'all. Mayor, City Board, City Staff. I'm Robert Webb. I'm here representing the Arkansas Democratic Black Caucus and our 800-plus members. And we want to say that we're in complete support of PIT. We think PIT has been successful, but it's kind of disappointing that you think that PIT alone is going to fix the ills of our city. It's not just PIT. We're talking about unemployment. We're talking about education. We're talking about parks. This is a holistic approach. And if you're not going to take a holistic approach, then talking about PIT in such small confines is kind of disappointing because, again, we have far greater problems than just the PIT issue. PIT can fix part of the problem, but we have to start talking about employment. We need to talk about parks. We need to talk about adequate housing. We need to talk about unemployment. I mean, there's a plethora of things that we need to talk about. I think it's kind of disingenuous for us to put all the onus on PIT alone when it's not just PIT. I mean, we spend what's the budget for the police department? $45 million? But $68 million? $68 million. Well, we spend $68 million to prevent crime, or really we don't spend $6 to $8 million to prevent crime. We spend $6 to $8 million so they can respond to crime, but we don't spend the same amount to prevent crime. I think that's kind of disingenuous to constantly have this conversation around the $5.5 million for PIT. Again, I hope this resonates today that this is bigger than just PIT alone. PIT is a Band-Aid that we're putting on a problem that we need to have a surgeon or a doctor to address this issue, but we're doing it with a Band-Aid. And to keep talking about PIT alone, again, it's disappointing. We have to talk about unemployment. We have to talk about education. We have to talk about parks. I mean, Chief Thomas made a great point when he was here. He said that parks are part of helping him fight crime because young kids have an opportunity to burn that energy off in quality parks where they have green space to run in and burn off that positive energy. But unfortunately, we never have that conversation about parks in south of 630. We never have those conversations. So I'd like to challenge you all today to let's have a conversation about those issues I just brought up. Let's not discuss PIT the way we currently discuss it. Let's start discussing unemployment. Let's start discussing parks. Let's start discussing education and how we can change the outcomes of these young men who are committing the crimes. Again, I thank you for your time, and I missed y'all. Good to see y'all again.
Thank you, Robert. Director Richardson?
We don't miss you, Robert, but thanks for being here tonight.
Did you say we did or didn't miss
We
you?
don't. Yes. I don't. I can't speak for the rest of you guys. Robert, that's a nice segue for a question I have of you, Tom. I think last week or week before last, we talked about PIT and the conceptual framework, and I think one of my colleagues requested an opinion on whether or not it was appropriate for me to talk. Have you come to a conclusion whether or not I was within my rights to have a conversation that night about this PIT conceptual framework or this approach on how to address issues related to children, youth, and families?
I'm still putting that into a memorandum. I got distracted Thursday and Friday taking care of an apartment complex.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
Director Hendricks, you're recognized, please.
Thank you. I want to share with Mr. Robert, PIT will not be taken off the blackboard. It's just going to be sort of changed, and we need your help, and I'm asking for the help of the general public. Nobody's talking about moving that money, not as long as I'm here, okay? But we really need to make some changes. The proof is in the pudding when you look at what happened on New Year's Eve day. And I talk about it all the time, this black on black. Most of this money is being spent for us, and I want to see some results.
Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn? Is there a second? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Opposed say nay. Or an adjournment. Thank you.